Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what, if neglected Naruto is Inuyasha's brother. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Dracahala117 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. The day was October 10th, and it was a momentous occasion. The Yandame's wife Kushina Uzumaki had given birth to twin children. The older twin was a boy who was to be named Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the second was a girl who was to be named Natsuki Uzumaki Namikaze. The village had held a festival for the birth of the heirs to the most powerful clan in Konoha, but not everything was to be perfect. Not even half a day after the birth of the two children, was there a massive killing intent that washed over the village. Minato jumped to see what was going on, and his eyes widened in terror. Right at the outskirts of the village was the Kyubi no Yoko, and by the demon's stance it was here to kill. He jumped from the tower and with Orochimaru landed in front of the podium. Attention all shinobi, get in battle formations, immediately evacuate all civilians to the shelters. This is a SSS class emergency. This is not a drill, I repeat. This is not a drill. He used Orochimaru again and entered the council chambers. He then smashed his fist into a portion of the table. Clicks were heard as a secret compartment opened to reveal a scroll. If worse comes to worse, I hope it does not come to that. He used Orochimaru and got on the walls of the village. His shinobi were coming through the village behind him. Charge! He yelled out to his shinobi as they attacked the great beast. The Kyubi no Yoko, the strongest of the demons, was struggling to regain control of her body. The oldest living Uchiha, Madara Uchiha, had used his eternal Manjikyu to take command of her mind. He had managed to gain enough control over her to force her to attack Konoha, her chosen village. She was powerless as Madara used her body as a Suna ninja would use a battle puppet. She cursed Tsukuyumi for granting the Uchiha clan that accursed illusion. She suddenly saw the armies of Konoha jumping over the walls. No, I don't want to kill them, I have to break free of this wretch's control. The Kyubi began to struggle as the shinobi began to attack her while Madara reveled in Konoha's imminent destruction. General fight POV. The shinobi were attacking the Kyubi with every attack they knew: earth jutsu, fire jutsu, clan techniques, anything that might hold a candle to Kyubi's power. On a nearby hill a group of shinobi was standing, performing a set of hand seals with blood smeared upon their palms. The oldest looking on was Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha. The pale-looking man with golden eyes and wearing a flowing battle kimono was Orochimaru Mitarashi. The woman with the long blonde hair tied in pigtails, wearing a green vest with the kanji for gamble on the back, was Tsunade Senju. The man with the long spiky white hair wearing an old-fashioned samurai casual wear was Jiraiya Kazama. The last person had a bowl-cut hairstyle, large eyebrows, and was wearing a skin-tight green track suit was Kinnikugai. The five performed the last hand seal and slammed their palms into the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu. A massive puff of smoke tore through the surrounding forest as five giants appeared. Hiruzen Sarutobi was standing upon a massive baboon. It was wearing what seemed to be a massive pelt, and it had a long tail with a whip-like ending. Orochimaru Mitarashi was standing upon a massive purple cobra with black rings that went all the way down the body. Tsunade Senju was standing on a large slug with poison spikes sticking out from its back. Jiraiya Kazama was standing on a massive horned toad with a spiked two-pronged trident in its hands. Kinnikugai was standing upon a giant turtle that was missing its right eye and had a long beard that reached the ground. Kyubi turned towards the five massive summons and roared a primal cry as it ran at them. Jiraiya yelled to his toad, "Gamma can keep Kyubi busy. I am going to use Sage Mode." The toad jumped and slammed its bident into the ground as it answered, "I will try, although I am not all that smart." The toad dodged out of the way as it swung its weapon at Kyubi. Tsunade yelled to her slug, "Ketsuyaha, you know the drill." She jumped from the top of the slug and began to perform hand signs. She finished the hand signs as the slug exploded into a cloud of gas. Ninpo, Dokusuju, the poison cloud, suddenly began to move towards the massive demon. Orochimaru spoke to the serpent, "Alright Manda, let's show this demon how badly a snake bites." The serpent hissed in approval, "Now you're talking my language." His mouth opened as two holes opened in the top of his mouth. His hood extended, making him seem much larger as he shot out a massive dose of venom. Hiruzen looked at the baboon. "Enmasara, let's show this fox what happens when it messes with Konoha." The monkey nodded as it jumped towards the bijou. Kinnikugai looked at the turtle and yelled in a very loud voice, "Alright my most youthful compatriot, let us show this unyouthful demon what we are made of, but let's make it quick. I have to check on little Lee." Kinnikugai began crying happy waterfall tears at the mention of his grandson. "Ugh, I am not as youthful as I was before, but let's do it." The giant turtle yelled as it also cried waterfall tears. It opened its mouth as a massive ball of water began to form. The five summon bosses yelled as they attacked the Kyubi. Each attack they did was a direct hit. They began to yell as the thrashing of Kyubi's tails stopped, thinking they had beaten it, but their cheering ceased when they heard a massive roar from the billowing cloud of smoke as a blast of chakra in the form of a tsunami washed over the village. The summons were thrown back into the surrounding forest, crushing a few Konoha ninja. With Madara laughed maniacally as he looked over the destruction brought by his pets. Soon the entire village of Konoha would be nothing but a burning crater, and nothing would stop him from taking over the entire world. Soon I will ascend to godhood, and then nothing will stand in my way. He watched as the Kyubi sent a wave of chakra, knocking over the massive summons, Soon I will have my revenge. Minato looked as he saw the battle turning for the worse. The Kyuubi was far too powerful, they were not going to win this. He looked at the scroll in his pouch. I really wish it did not come to this. He quickly performed hydration as he went to the place that held the last option he ever wanted to use, his children's nursery, with the newborns. Kushina was breastfeeding Natsuki while Naruto was sleeping. She had been in the nursery ever since she heard the Kyuubi was attacking. It was probably the safest place in the clan's compound at the moment. She looked at her two children, hoping that Minato wouldn't have to use that jutsu. She continued to look at her children, when suddenly a flash of golden light washed over the room. Kushina shielded her eyes when the light finally died down. Minato was standing there with a torn expression. Kushina, I am sorry, there is no other way. Kushina looked down as she saw her husband walk up to Naruto's crib. It must be Naruto, it is his place as firstborn. I am sorry, my son. He performed a few more seals as he disappeared in a flash of golden light as Kushina began to sob to herself. Please let my baby live. Back to the fight. Minato appeared in a flash of light on the walls of Konoha as his soldiers continued to attack Kyuubi. He looked at his firstborn son and whispered to himself, my son, you will grow up without a father, and you will become a living scroll. I am sorry, my son. He gently placed Naruto on the ground and began to perform hand signs. He then cried out as he slammed his palm into the ground as he focused on a specific point. Kuchios no Jutsu. A large poof of smoke appeared as a massive toad with a giant dagger revealed itself. Minato quickly jumped on top of the toad's head as he yelled, come on Gamabunta, I need your help one last time. Gamabunta looked at Minato. Minato, it was a pleasure to work with you. Gamabunta leapt at the Kyuubi with its dagger drawn. Kyuubi lashed her tail out and slammed it against the chakra-charged dagger. The two titans were thrown back from the blast of raw chakra. Meanwhile, Minato was performing hand seals. Shiki Fuin. He yelled out as a large wave of chakra washed over the area, breaking the control Madara had over Kyuubi. With Kyuubi, Kyuubi blinked her eyes as she looked around. The genjutsu, it has been released. She looked as she saw a dark esper appear above Minato. No wonder, thank you Yandame. Now she turned towards Madara, who was standing upon a massive tree. What was that about, using me for your revenge, Madara Uchiha? Kyuubi jumped at the tree as Minato jumped away from the enraged Bijou Queen, trying and failing to avoid the demon's wrath. Back with Minato. Minato watched as Kyuubi suddenly turned her attention towards a tree and then attacked it with a cold fury. What the hell is going on? Suddenly he felt a dark, ominous presence behind him. He slowly turned and saw the form of the Shinigami appear before him. So it is time. Minato was about to begin the sealing when the Shinigami's hand grabbed his arm. Before he performed the first seal, he turned back to the Shinigami who was watching Kyuubi attack the forest. Not everything is as it seems, Nijin. Minato turned to the fight and his eyes widened when he saw a stream of black flames coming from the forest itself. What in the name of Kami? He continued to watch as Kyuubi unleashed a blast of raw chakra from its mouth. Madara used Amaterasu at Kyuubi, but the demoness sidestepped it and sent a massive wave of chakra out of its mouth. Madara was thrown back by the blast of demonic energy and barely survived. The Uchiha Immortal slammed into a wall headfirst. He got up and began to look around. What the hell? He looked up to see the giant fox, and spoke in an incredibly childish voice. Why is there a giant cute and cuddly standing over me? And why is it holding a glowing red ball in its mouth? And why does it look like it wants to kill me? I am a good boy. Madara ran out of the blast of chakra and was blown away by the massive output of energy. He was hit with such a shockwave, in fact, that he landed extremely far away from the raging demoness. Kyuubi snarled as she looked left and right for the Uchiha Immortal, unaware that she has just made him a shell of his former self. Come out, Madara, I know you are out there. Come out here so I can devour you. She sniffed the air and smelt the Uchiha's scent in the direction of grass country. You are mine now. She ran off in the direction of grass country, hoping to find her prey. Minato looked as Kyuubi retreated. He now understood someone was controlling Kyuubi, and it wasn't the Kyuubi's fault. He looked down at his son, and even still he will grow up without a father. Minato let his head fall as he thought the Shinigami would still take his soul. Apparently the Shinigami had seen his thoughts. I will not take your soul. The only reason I would take your soul is if you had me tear out the soul of another, which you did not. Minato looked up at the Shinigami with glee. However, there is a price for summoning me. Minato looked down as the Shinigami raised his blade. You will lose 10% of our original lifespan. He slashed his blade down through Minato. The Shinigami sheathed his blade as he vanished in a dark cloud. Minato looked towards his son and embraced him in his arms. My son, you will grow up with a father. I promise I will be the best father I can be. As Minato turned to head back to Konoha, he did not notice the excess chakra from the battle from both Madara and Kyuubi seep into Naruto's undeveloped chakra coils. The next day, Minato called all of Konoha out to make his announcement. Attention people of Konoha, it is a sad day. We have lost many a good shinobi due to the attack of the Kyuubi, but truths have been revealed that we did not know before. It seems the Kyuubi was not acting on its own will. The crowd gasped. The Kyuubi was under the control of an incredibly powerful individual, and by the looks of the powers being erected, someone with the ability to control the Kyuubi's mind. Many a shinobi turned their heads towards the Uchiha. Any shinobi that studied the history of Konoha knew that Madara had somehow been able to command the Kyuubi, and it made many of them suspicious. But rejoice, we will take our defeat at the hands of this monster, and we shall rise and become the most powerful nation again. This I swear. The crowds cheered in joy as Minato walked back to his office. Meanwhile, the young blonde was lying in a crib next to his dear twin sister, as his eyes began to take on a darker hue and faint whisker marks appeared upon his face. A year after Kyuubi's attack, if it could truly be called that, the two young twins were playing outside. Kushina was on the side of the yard, watching them. Over the years the two twins had grown much closer than she had expected. It wasn't surprising. Ever since the attack, she and Minato were working overtime. She had not spent all that much time with her children. Most of the time the twins had to ask who she was. It always hurt when they asked that question, but it didn't surprise her. From her calculations, she had spent a total of 5 hours with her children in the last month. It was even worse with Minato. The two were lucky to see him for more than an hour each month. Naruto was playing with a leaf while Natsuki was smelling flowers. Natsuki found an especially pretty flower and smiled. She picked the flower from the ground and put it in her hair. She turned to Naruto. She walked over to him and poked his back. Aniki Naruto turned to get jumped on by his younger sister. Kushina watched the two wrestle with a smile on her face. She got up and walked inside, knowing that the two's caretaker would make sure they were alright. In the trees, Orochimaru was watching the two with a smile on his face. Aren't they adorable? It reminds me of little Enko-chan. Orochimaru smiled. His daughter had become increasingly distant since her mother's death. But she did have a soft spot for the two. She used to always come over to watch the two, but now she spent all her time with her teammates Irika and Mizuki. He sighed as he walked over to the two. Alright, that's enough, you two. The two stopped wrestling and their eyes widened when they saw who was there. Orochimaru and the two ran up to Orochimaru and began to cling to his legs as they began asking him how he was doing. The two were incredibly bright and mature for their age, Naruto especially so. He often wondered why the whiskered boy was so mature. He had asked Minato if he could figure out why that was so, but Minato had clearly said, "No experimentations on my son." Son, how could that man call himself a father when he barely spent more than 14 hours a year checking up on them? Okay, you two, let's go get you two something to eat. Natsuki leapt up into Orochimaru's arms, but Naruto spoke up. Orochimaru, look, he picked up the leaf and began to concentrate on it. Orochimaru chuckled. Naruto must be trying to get the leaf to levitate. Naruto had seen some of the older clan members do it, and said it was cool. Naruto, it will be a while before you are ready to actually be able to do that. Naruto pouted as he looked down. Orochimaru smiled at the blonde, but do not worry, you will eventually be able to do it. Come on, let's go get some ramen. At the mention of ramen, Naruto quickly climbed up Orochimaru and sat on his shoulders. As they walked through the village, everyone began to whisper. Once everyone had seen the whisker marks on Naruto's face, they assumed the worst and that the Kyuubi somehow possessed him. Those rumors were silenced by the yondaime. Quickly as the three walked through the village, they never noticed the shadow behind them. In the shadows was a silver-haired man with a muzzle around his face. His name was Juromaru. He had been tasked with killing the heirs to the Namikaze clan, and in return he would be allowed to remove his muzzle. Orochimaru was about to walk into Ichiraku's ramen when he suddenly felt an odd presence behind him. He looked as he saw a shadow move. He narrowed his eyes. So another assassin, when will they learn? He walked into the ramen stand and dropped off the two twins. I will be right back. Place the bill on my tab. Tuchi smiled at Orochimaru as his wife was making the noodles. Meanwhile, Juromaru was so intent with watching the two, waiting for the chance where he could slit their throats, that he never noticed Orochimaru creep up behind him until he was knocked unconscious. Back at the stand, Naruto was looking at his bowl of miso ramen, while Natsuki was eating her second bowl. He began to stir the noodles as he began to think to himself, why can't I get that stupid leaf to levitate? He sighed as he began to eat his noodles. Natsuki looked at her brother as she thought to herself, why is Aniki so down? She scooted closer to Naruto and grabbed some of his noodles. Naruto looked at his sister as she began to place the noodles in his mouth. Tuchi and Ana could not help but smile at the two kids. Minato was incredibly frustrated. Ever since the Kyuubi attack, rumors have been going around that Konoha was too weak to defeat Abiju. It did not help matters that every other great nation, along with a few smaller nations, now had either one or more Jinchuriki. Even the splinter group from what used to be Sora no Kuni had the Reibi, and Konoha, the supposed greatest nation of the five, did not even have one. Ever since then, Konoha has been getting fewer missions. Minato has had to send more jonin on missions just to guarantee a success. For the village to survive nowadays, he had no choice but to increase taxes by a margin of 5% per citizen. He had to cut funding for various local business. And now he had to reduce the pay for his shinobi. All in all, Konoha was going to hell. On top of that, the Uzumaki Namikaze clan had become less powerful. They now only held half the power they originally did from a year ago. He had entrusted the clan council to deal with most affairs, and so far things were not looking good. By the calculations of his brother Erasure, the Uzumaki Namikaze clan will become as less important as the Kurama clan. Minato slammed his hands on the desk. What should I do? I am a Hokage, a clan head, and a father. How can I do all these things? I can't use shadow clones, since my chakra reserves are not large enough for them, and I can't hire more shinobi. What do I do? Minato sat as he looked at the files on his desk. They were proposals of marriage from various daimyos to his children. He had utterly refused the ones for his daughter, as the people they wanted to arrange her to were absolutely disgusting perverts, but the ones that were proposed to his son, the girls, were slightly older than him, by about a year to 4, and it would provide necessary funding for the village. Minato filed the marriage proposals away for a later date. So far he had proposals from Yuki no Kuni, Na no Kuni, Oni no Kuni, and even Rai no Kuni. Minato pondered the last one. Kumobakure and Konoha had been enemies for a while, and they wanted to arrange a marriage between the Raikage's daughter and Naruto. He sighed to himself, his eyes then snapped open in determination as he thought to himself, I am sorry my children, but I am a Hokage and a clan head first, and a father second. He stood up and walked out of the office ready to put his plan into action. Back with Orochimaru. Orochimaru sighed as he walked back to the ramen stand. He had just dropped off that assassin to ANBU headquarters. He wondered who had hired him this time. Last time it was an IWA Shinobi. The time before that it was a member of the AIM rebellion. What was next? Orochimaru walked into the ramen stand and smiled at the sight he was seeing. Natsuki and Naruto had fallen asleep on each other as they were eating ramen. He chuckled when he saw Tuchi taking pictures, muttering something about blackmail. Orochimaru sighed as he picked up the two sleeping infants and carried them back to the clan compound. He was about to walk right through the gates when an ANBU appeared in front of him. Orochimaru-sama, Hokage-sama has commanded the presence of all shinobi ranking chunin or higher. I would not keep him waiting if I were you. He disappeared in a shunshin as Orochimaru grumbled to himself. That bastard has enough time to arrange a meeting between the jonin but not enough time to check up on his children. He walked inside and placed the two sleeping infants in their crib. He placed the fox plushie in between the two as they cuddled closer together. He smiled at how close the two were. He quickly took out his camera and snapped a picture of the two before he disappeared in a shunshin. Later, Orochimaru took his seat on the jonin council as his old teammates took their positions on either side of him. As he waited for Minato to arrive, he began looking around the room to see who was there. Kakashi. He did not agree on Kakashi becoming jonin so soon. He felt that the boy needed more time to understand principles of teamwork and camaraderie, but Minato had stated that Kakashi was more than ready for the task of jonin. He ate those words when after his first mission of being a jonin, Obito, who was supposed to take over the position of clan head, was killed by an IWA ninja because Kakashi felt that the mission was more important than his comrades. Since then Kakashi has become a personality mixture of his own personality and Obito's. Asuma, the Sandame's youngest son, he had felt that Asuma should wait a few years before he should be allowed to go further in the ranks. Asuma had a quick temper, was lazy, and hardly worked well with others. Because of this, only a third of the missions Asuma led were ever successful. Kurina Yohi, she was actually a chunin, but Orochimaru saw that she was more than capable of being a jonin. True, she should not focus on just genjutsu arts, but she was well-tempered, capable of controlling her emotions, and was able to make rational decisions. He had even requested that she be made jonin, but Minato had stated that she was not experienced enough yet to attain that rank. Mato Gai, the last living son of Kinaka Gai, the finest taijutsu master in all of Konoha, he along with his son Rock Lee, who had been named after Lee's mother, were the last remaining members of the Gai family. The clan had no special abilities besides their amazing stamina, their ability to cast unbreakable illusions that baffled even members of the Kurama clan, and their rather odd-and-born traits. Mato was more than capable of being a jonin. In fact, he was even able to give Tsunade a run for her money in terms of strength. He could easily outmove Minato in a contest of speed so long as Hiraishin was not involved, and he had a no-one-gets-left-behind attitude. There were many other jonin, chunin, tokubetsu jonin and the likes all around the table. In Orochimaru's opinion, not even half of them should even be allowed to these meetings. While a good portion of them deserved their ranks, they were not familiar enough with politics to make rational decisions. Before he could look around again, Minato appeared at the main table in a flash of golden light. He looked over his shinobi and spoke, I am sure you are all wondering why you are here. The shinobi nodded their heads. Since the Kyuubi's attack on the village, we have been getting fewer and fewer missions coming in and out of Konoha. This has put a damper on our economy, and I have had to make rash decisions to keep our village afloat. The shinobi nodded their heads. On top of that, outer nations have been getting stronger. Soon our village may end up fading into the pages of history. They all were shocked by this prospect. However, I may have a solution for this dilemma. The shinobi visibly perked up. Orochimaru was looking at Minato with a calculating eye. What are you up to, Minato? Minato looked towards his shinobi. In light of recent events, I have decided that our academy curriculum is lacking. Many kunoichi that come out of the academy are not properly equipped for the real world, and shinobi are becoming more arrogant with each new generation. Our mission success has decreased because of this. Everyone nodded their heads to this. As such, we must take new measures to ensure students are properly equipped for the world to come. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. What is going on? From now on, all academy students will have to score an average to be a part of the shinobi program. If they do not score that average, they will have to take the year over again. The shinobi nodded their heads, thinking it was a good idea. Failure to score average the second time will mean they are dropped from the program for good. The shinobi looked at Minato with slight confusion. True, some students were not ready for being shinobi at different ages, but to permanently drop them from the program. Also, from now on, those who wish to enter the academy must demonstrate ability in either a basic academy jutsu, have knowledge of a given criteria, or display basic taijutsu form. The shinobi looked at Minato again. No non-shinobi families were allowed in the shinobi section of the library, so it was impossible for them to get scrolls on the basic techniques. Hayashi chose to voice this complaint. Yandame-sama, how will the civilian families acquire these skills? Non-shinobi are not allowed in the shinobi section of the library. Minato looked at his old teammate and answered. There will be a special program set up in a week's time. The head of that program, as I have decided, shall be Fugaku Uchiha. Fugaku stood up at that. Yandame-sama, I am already busy with my family and clan. How can I possibly be able to assist a group of upcoming graduates? Minato looked at Fugaku with a cold eye. Consider it a test of loyalty after all. Since the Kyuubi attack, your clan's ways have become questionable. Fugaku mentally snarled at the blonde. The shinobi's distrust of his clan since the attack had passed on to the civilians, and because of it, they were not well liked by many storekeepers. Ichiraku's ramen seemed to be the only place that did not follow the civilians' view. Fugaku sighed as he answered, Yes, Yandame-sama. He sat down as Minato turned to the shinobi. Meeting adjourned, he quickly disappeared in S flash of light, while the others disappeared in their own various shunshin techniques. Orochimaru and a few others were still in the room. He pondered the Yandame's plan. What is your next move, Minato? 1 week later, Iwagakure. That Tsuchikage was screaming bloody murder at the man sitting in front of him. Your servant was supposed to kill the Yandame's brats, and now we have to pay a substantial sum to avoid going to war with that damned village. Or we have to give up our 2 Jinchuriki. Han and Rashi are not yet ready to fight against the village, and the sums they demand will make our country bankrupt. The man looked at the Tsuchikage and spoke. Do not worry, Juramara has other abilities. The man threw a paper seal in front of the elder Tsuchikage. Just wipe some blood and my other servant shall do the rest. The Tsuchikage snarled at the man, but wiped his blood on the seal anyways. It lit up and then flew back into the man's hands. It was a pleasure doing business with you, Tsuchikage-sama. The man disappeared in a pillar of black fire. You better not disappoint me, Rukatsusiai. On the other side of Hai no Kuni, a young woman was walking outside as she carried her stepson. He was barely a year old, and his mother had died in childbirth. She had married his father after he had saved her from being murdered by a prideful Oni. She sat outside of their little cottage as she began to nurse the little baby. She had lost her first child months before when her boyfriend had sliced open her stomach due to not wanting a child. She looked at the baby in her arms. He had silver hair, purple claw marks on his cheeks, and amber-slitted eyes. My little Sesshomaru, I will always love you. Izaoi nuzzled Sesshomaru, eliciting giggles from the young Inu Yuki. Meanwhile, Sesshomaru's father looked at the touching scene. Jinsuke Inagami, also known as the Inu no Teisho, the lord of the western lands, was lovingly looking at his human wife. In the realm of demons it was considered a sin for a demon of pure blood to marry a human, but Jinsuke did not care. But he knew there would be enemies to come that would use his love against him, and he would fight them to his last breath. Time skip 4 years. Naruto was doing push-ups along with his sister. Ever since the day his father had announced the academy requirements, he had finally began to come home more often, but it was strictly for clan matters. When he and his sister turned 2.5, they were immediately placed through a severe training program. At first Naruto was the one that was deemed the most potential. He had higher stamina, healed faster, and overall was a better learner until his sister activated their parents' Kekkei Genkai. Naruto looked up into the eyes of his uncle Erasure. What are you doing, still training? Your sister has completed a third of what you have done. It is time for sparring. He walked away as Naruto pushed himself off the ground. He walked behind Erasure and entered the arena. His sister was directly across from him and was standing with a strong stance. Hajime. The two twins sprung at each other. Naruto ducked a strike that Natsuki threw and sent a springing heel kick, L's kick on light in Death Note, which she barely dodged. Natsuki back-flipped and managed to nick Naruto's chin as he spun for a side hook kick. She used her arm bracers to block it but was sent sprawling on the arena. Naruto charged at her, about to deliver the final strike when she disappeared in a flash of light. His eyes widened and then they shut in agitation when he felt a cold steel object on his neck. He turned and looked into the blue eyes of his sister. He smiled as he spoke. I yield. His sister smiled and gave him a peck on the cheek. He blushed at the contact. He was about to give her a kiss of his own, twack, when he was backhanded by Erasure. Erasure looked at Naruto with disappointment. Pathetic, the son of the clan head, and the Yandame, and you immediately yield. Utterly pathetic. Erasure began to circle the blonde as Natsuki tried to bring her brother back up from the ground. If you could activate your Saishigen, then you would have been able to counter that strike, and not only that, you can't even activate Kushina-sama's bloodline. How difficult is it to activate a bloodline that decreases the amount of time to train? Your sister is 2 minutes your junior, and yet she expresses far more ability in it than you do. He walked up to Naruto and slammed his foot into his back. You had better have those bloodlines activated by the time the Hyuga heiress turns 6. We do not want the humiliation of being outdone by a lesser clan on our shoulders. He took his foot off of Naruto and walked back to the compound. Natsuki began to tend to her brother's bruises, but they were already healing. She couldn't stand to see her brother be hurt so much. And to think, all his pain started because he saved her from that assassin when they were barely a year and a half old. Flashback. Naruto and Natsuki were walking with Orochimaru to ANBU headquarters. Apparently he was needed at the interrogation department. The assassin that had tried to kill them 6 months ago was not letting his lips loose, and only Orochimaru himself was a better interrogator than Ibiki. The twins had no other babysitter, as everyone else was now on missions. So Orochimaru had no choice but to bring them with him. As the trio descended the stairs to ANBU headquarters, they noticed that it was unusually quiet in there. Orochimaru picked up on this and slowly pulled out his kusanagi. He began to edge towards the opening of the door, and then suddenly opened it. He sniffed the air and hissed, "Knockout gas intruder or escapee?" He quickly turned to the kids, "Run now." The twins were about to run for the door when it was suddenly closed. They looked around to see who could possibly have closed it when they heard a dark chuckling. "Well, it looks like someone brought the Namikaze brats to us. Rukatsuki-sama will be pleased. Perhaps in return he will free us from Naruto's control." The trio looked around as the room began to fog up with a purple fog. Natsuki began to cough, as Orochimaru only lightly wheezed. Naruto seemed perfectly fine. So the group turned and saw Juromaru come out of the shadows with a necklace of spiny objects around his neck. "It seems that the elder brat is immune to our miasma. No matter. He will die soon enough." Juromaru's lips did not move in the slightest throughout his entire speech. Orochimaru was about to attack when suddenly the necklace around the assassin's neck sprung towards him. He blocked the spiked attack and slashed it out of the way. He looked at the necklace to find that it was actually a living creature. The creature slinked about as it spoke. "So you are faster than you look, but you should be concentrating on my targets, not me." The creature, which had to be some sort of demon, attacked Orochimaru. Juromaru launched himself at the two children who ran to opposite sides. However, Natsuki collapsed from the miasma. Juromaru saw this as an opportunity and ran at her. He grabbed her by her hair as she began to cry and squeal from the pain. Naruto saw what the man was doing and ran at him. The man quickly batted him away. As he looked at Natsuki, he exhaled, releasing a purple fog. Natsuki began to twitch as she inhaled the fog. Naruto became distressed. He was not strong enough to help his own sister. Suddenly he saw a pole on the ground. He ran to it and grabbed it before he ran behind Juromaru and swung the pite into the side of his knee. Juromaru let go of Natsuki as she crashed to the ground screaming in pain and terror. The other creature looked to see blood but was surprised to see his brother keeling over in pain. This was enough of a distraction for Orochimaru to sever the creature's head from its body before he ran his kusanagi into Juromaru's heart. Orochimaru grabbed the two twins and ran out of the building praying that the two would be alright. End flashback. After that incident, Minato had allowed testing for his son. The miasma was a dangerous neurotoxin that would force the nerves to randomly convulse until the nerves were so confused that it was impossible for them to do their proper jobs. After the testing were done, it was found that Naruto had 3 sets of chakra, his own and other humans, which carried similarities to Uchiha chakra and the Kyubis. True, the 2 chakras were in minor amounts, but they focused around specific areas, improving them to a certain point. The assumed Uchiha chakra was focused around his eyes and nerves. Thus he had a much higher sight perception, and his reflexes and acrobatics were superb. The Kyubi's chakra was focused around his muscle tissue and white blood cells. Thus his muscles were much more flexible and yet dense. He also healed much quicker, up to the point that toxins did not affect him. However, the 2 chakra left another problem. The chances of Naruto activating either one of his parents' bloodline was extremely slim. He would always be able to pass it on, but he was unlikely to ever activate them. Minato did not heed these warnings. Instead, he forced his children into intense training regimens. Kushina watched from the sidelines, a cold expression on her face. Mission after mission had made her consider more about the well-being of the village and the clan than she did for her own children. She did show more concern for them than Minato did, but she was very favoritist towards Natsuki, who displayed both of their clan's bloodlines. She walked back inside the compound as Natsuki tended to Naruto. Naruto had become slightly bitter. Arashi's training, and his preaching that the Kekkei Genkai showed true membership of the clan, made Naruto begin to resent Kekkei Genkai. It wasn't to the point where he would like to massacre all with a Kekkei Genkai, but he absolutely hated the mention of the words bloodline, or Kekkei Genkai. It always left a bitter taste in his mouth. Natsuki, she was bitter that her brother was punished for something he had no control over, and the fact that their own parents were a part of the problem left her angry at the clan. Many a night Naruto would be so upset that he would cry himself to sleep and Natsuki would crawl into bed with him in a loving embrace, not that kind of love, and would try to soothe him to sleep. The 2 twins stood up as they continued training. Meanwhile, an event was happening over 100 miles away that would change their lives forever. Border of Hai no Kuni, a massive dog monster slashed at a giant dragon that had a no mask on its head. The dog monster snarled at the dragon and drove its front claw into the chest of the dragon. The claw lit up with a golden light as it broke off of the dog's paw. The dragon roared as it was covered in a layer of demonic aura that froze the monster solid. On a nearby cliff, a pregnant Izayoi and a 5-year-old Sesomaru were watching the fight. The demon that the dog was fighting was Rukatsuki, and the dog was Sesomaru's father, Izayoi's husband, and the Inu no Teisho Jinsuke Inagami. Jinsuke panted as he began to shift back into his human form. He was enveloped in a golden light as he transformed back into his human form. He was a regal-looking man with spiked shoulder pads. He had long silver hair and had claw marks on either side of his face. On the left side of his body were 2 swords forged from his own fangs, and a sword on his back which was more deadly than the demon he fought before. He clutched his side as he hissed in pain. Rukatsuki had dealt a strong blow, and even with his demonic healing rate, it would be months before it fully healed. He stood up and began walking to the cliff where his family was waiting. On the adjacent cliff, a samurai with crimson armor and a battalion of soldiers behind him looked at the wounded dog demon. The man snarled at Jinsuke, I will take back my Lady Azaoi demon filth. The man began to walk down the cliff paths as his soldiers followed behind him. Soon they would make their move and Takamaru of Setsuno would take back what was his, the Lady Azaoi. Time skip, 1 year. Jinsuke slashed at the samurai in front of him as he drew his Tasega. He ducked under an incoming strike from another samurai and shoved his claws into the man's heart. He twisted and used his sword to block a strike from a samurai carrying a halberd as he backflipped, cutting the men into pieces. He brought his sword up and swung it down as it changed into what looked to be a massive fang, Kaze no Kizu. A dozen slashes of energy came from the blade and tore through the samurai ranks. He turned his head to the palace on the mountain slopes and snarled as he ran towards it. He winced as he felt his old wound from Rukatsusei acting up again. He paid it no mind. His current target was Takamaru. At the palace, Azaoi began to back against the wall as she clutched her 3-month-old son to her chest. What do you want, Takamaru? The regal samurai smiled at Azaoi as he walked closer to her. I want you back, my lovely Azaoi. Please allow me to kill that filth you hold in your arms, and let us ride off into the sunset. He reached for the woman, and she slapped his hand away. You lost your chance to be with me when you killed our first child, or do you not remember slicing open my stomach when I told you I was pregnant? She spoke with so much venom it made a snake seem harmless. Takamaru sighed as he walked to a vase that held a rose. He picked up the rose and spun it in his fingers. My dear Azaoi, it was an act of love. You were not ready to be a mother, but now you are my love. He dropped the rose. So please come back to me. You can have the family you always wanted. He walked up to her, as she pulled out a dagger with a shining silver blade. I have that and more with my Jinsuke-kun. Takamaru sneered. A demon? You would be the mother to a demon's children. Fine. Then he pulled out his katana and looked to the baby in her arms. If I can't have you through caring, then I shall take you by force and kill that beast in your arms. He rose his sword up to strike her. Back off, my mommy! He turned to see a set of claws before they slashed him across the face. He grabbed his face as the young owner of the claws, Sesomaru, landed in front of Azaoi in a defensive stance. Takamaru looked at the child in front of him. Damn demon, die! He swung his sword, crashed, but turned his head as the wall was broken through by an extremely angry Jinsuke, who was now wielding Soanga. Jinsuke snarled at the samurai lord, Takamaru. He swung Soanga and sent the man through the other wall. He ran at the samurai as the two began to clash blades. The two continued clashing blades as Jinsuke began to think to himself, how is it he is keeping up with me? Soanga can cut through a dragon's hide. How is it he is able to block these strikes? Takamaru cringed as he tightened the grip on his sword. It was a pain in the ass getting that demon blood to reinforce the sword, but it will all be worth it in the end. Once I finally kill you and take my beloved Azaoi. Jinsuke. He swung his blade and managed to get a slash into Jinsuke's body. Takamaru chuckled as he looked at the demon lord. You are pitiful. Once again I have proven that none are capable of defeating me. He swung his sword, about to finish Jinsuke off. Wrath, but he was caught off guard when Jinsuke suddenly reverted to his demon form. He looked at the great dog demon and snarled. Whether you are in your human or demon form, you will fall, demon. Takamaru ran at Jinsuke as the dog demon caught the samurai in his mouth and jumped down the mountainside. Off in the sunset was Konoha no Sato with Naruto. Naruto was performing the katas for the Namikaze-style taijutsu, but for some reason, the forms just did not feel right to him. It was the same with the Uzumaki style. His sister was a master at both, but he proved to be insufficient with either one of them. Although, surprisingly, he was very good at Uchiha taijutsu. He learned the basics of it from his friend Sasuke. The two were probably the best of friends. The two had met when a genin was beating on Sasuke, saying his clan was the cause of the Kyuubi attack. Naruto had punched the genin and had drawn the genin away so Sasuke could escape. He then gave the genin the slip. The two met again at Ichiraku's. Over the years, Ichiraku's had grown considerably, especially since most of the customers to the restaurant was Uchiha's now. It was funny, years ago the Uchiha would not dare set foot in Ichiraku's, and now, they were left with only the choice of Ichiraku's. He had made close friends with some other clan members, Shurasui, Itachi, Mikoto, and Fugaku. The Uchihas also were nowhere near as arrogant as they were before. Unfortunately, his own family managed to fill the lack of arrogance from the Uchiha clan with a fog of arrogance that easily dwarfed the fire-style clan. Naruto finally collapsed from exhaustion as he sat right next to the training post. He curled himself into a ball as he began to choke to himself. It's not fair. Why am I the outcast? Why am I the one who is being belittled? All because I haven't activated a disgusting Kekkai Genkai over the last few months. Naruto's hatred of Kekkai Genkai grew immensely. He did not hate those who wielded them, just the Kekkai Genkai in general. Once, a member of the clan was bragging and belittling Naruto on how he was superior to him because he had activated the Saishugen. Naruto responded by shoving a kunai into the bastard's eyes. The man had been healed, but he would never be able to use his Kekkai Genkai again. Naruto got up and wiped away his tears and began to walk back into the clan compound. He walked into the Oriental-style lobby, and he began to look around. He finally walked down the hallway to his and Natsuki's room. He stopped, however, when he passed by his father's office. Kushina-chan, this seems to be the best course of action. We can both see that as far as shinobi skills, Naruto is useless. He has not even activated your bloodline, and he shows no proficiency in either of our clan's taijutsu. He edged closer to the door as he heard his father's words. I agree, Minato, but perhaps we should wait until his and Natsuki's birthday. You know that members of your clan may take up to the age of 6 to activate their Kekkei Genkai. Naruto smiled that his mother genuinely cared for him. However, if he does not activate the bloodline by then I agree that our clan would be better off if he was arranged to marry one of the young girls that the other nations are offering. At the very least he will provide some political power for our clan. Naruto backed away from the door. No Ka-chan. Naruto turned and ran down the hallway and ran into his room. He collapsed in the middle of the floor as he fell into a fit of sobs. Naruto remained that way for half an hour until Natsuki came into the room. She saw her brother lying on the floor. She walked up. Oh, him, Aniki? Naruto stiffened at the sound of her voice. Aniki, what's wrong? She heard Naruto mumble something. What was that? Naruto lifted his head up and glanced in her direction, showing part of his tear-stained face. Nothing. Naruto spoke in a frigid tone before he turned away from his sister. Natsuki frowned as she walked up to her brother. Aniki, I know you better than anyone. What is bothering you? Naruto turned his head to her. Pain, anger, hatred, all of it was evident in his eyes. Why would the so-called prodigy of our clan's disgusting bloodlines care? He turned away before Natsuki's eyes widened in shock. Natsuki felt an incredible amount of pain in her chest from that remark, and Naruto, her shock was quickly replaced with anger, as she grabbed her brother and forced him to look at her. What the hell is your problem? I tried to see if you were okay and then you go off on me with your whole I hate bloodlines shit. What is wrong, Naruto? The last part was said with so much care. Naruto looked down as he began to tear up. Ka-chan and Tusan, they want to marry me off to someone unless I activate one of their Kekkei Genkai by our birthday. He slammed his face into his sister's chest and began to sob. Natsuki slowly wrapped her arms around her brother as she began to stroke his back. So that's why he is upset, Naruto. She squeezed Naruto close to her as she began to whisper soothing words into his ear. Naruto slowly began to stop crying and fell asleep on his sister's shoulder. Natsuki carefully lifted Naruto up as best as she could, and laid him in the softest area of the room. She ran back to her bed, which arguably was actually the better bed, and took her covers off of it. She placed the blanket over Naruto, and then slid under the covers. She tried to fall asleep but found that she couldn't. She looked at her still sleeping brother and began to scoot over to him. She looked at her brother's face and traced the whisker marks. She heard him purr, and he began to subconsciously snuggle closer to the source of his pleasure. This caused Natsuki to blush a bit. Yes, Natsuki dearly loved her brother much more than any sister ever should, yet she did not know it. Natsuki blushed as she snuggled a bit closer to Naruto, until finally she got bold and wrapped his arms around her form. She then snuggled into his chest with a content smile on her face. Meanwhile, directly on the borders of Hai no Kuni, Jinsuke roared in rage as he shoved Soanga right into the heart of Takamaru. He began panting as the added wounds from the fight between the extremely powerful mortal, along with the wounds he received from Rikutsusei, began to take its toll on him. He fell to the ground as Izayoi, Sesshomaru, and his humble servants ran towards him. A flea jumped on Jinsuke's shoulders. My lord, you are injured, we must get you medical attention. Myoga jumped onto Jinsuke's neck and began to drink some blood, in which Jinsuke angrily swatted him away. Totosai came up to Jinsuke and looked at his wounds. Oh, this is not good. The closest hospital is in the human village over that way. He pointed in the direction of Konoha. And I have no way to get you there in time. Jinsuke groaned as he stood up. Then I will walk until finally get there. He began to walk towards the village as his son ran up to him. Sesshomaru was stopped when Myoga jumped on his ear. Master Sesshomaru, right now you will only slow your father down. We must find some herbs that will clean out any infections in his wounds. Myoga jumped onto Totosai, who was moving as quickly as his aged bones would allow him to. Izayoi was holding her son Inuyasha as Sesshomaru looked at his father's retreating figure. Don't worry, Tusama, you will be alright. Sesshomaru ran after Totosai as Izayoi followed, praying they found what they needed before it was too late. Back in Konoha, Naruto began to awake from his slumber. He opened his eyes and saw his sister snuggled up to his chest. He smiled as he gently stroked her hair. He always hated when he was so angry that he would take his hatred of bloodlines out on her. He pushed off the covers and then pulled them back over Natsuki. He looked outside. It was morning now, and the day he would turn 6 if he did not activate even one of his bloodlines by today. He would be married off to a woman he did not know. Naruto sighed as he walked out of his room. He went down the hallway and went to the door that led to the compound's gate. He walked past the guards, his second cousin Hiroshi and Uzumaki, and his third cousin Nanashira and Namikaze. The two were the few members of the clans that did not treat Naruto as if he was worthless. The two smiled as the blonde walked past them. The two turned to each other. I hope he activates his bloodline soon, or he will be married off to increase our clan's power. Nanashira scowled as she spoke. Her mother had been relegated to marry her father, a member of a formerly powerful clan. True, the two eventually were completely in love, but it could have turned out so much worse. Hiroshi sighed as he looked at Nanashira. I know I don't want to see my favorite cousin be relegated to such a fate. He blushed as he looked at Nanashira. Nanashira, if you aren't doing anything tonight, would you? I don't know. He stopped when he felt something press against his cheek. He turned towards the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Namikaze as she smiled. Nanashira looked at the red-haired Uzumaki. 6:50 tonight, don't keep me waiting. She slyly walked back to her post as she gave Hiroshi a sly wink. Hiroshi blushed as he looked away. Damn, I wonder if Naruto ever has this kind of trouble. With Naruto. Naruto was walking on the outskirts of the village walls. Few knew that he walked out here, and even fewer knew what he did. He walked up to a tree and began to stroke the wood. He waked around the tree until he found a knot hole. He reached inside the hole in the tree and pulled out the contents. Inside the tree was a set of white sharpened objects, and a bunch of black beads. He pulled out a beautiful-looking golden string and needle and began to piece the objects together. Naruto sat there for several hours, just fashioning the necklace. He looked at the necklace, and sighed. He was still missing something, but what was it? Naruto sighed, as he put the mostly finished necklace in his pocket. He was about to walk back towards the village, relegating himself to his father's will, when he suddenly heard snapping twigs. Naruto ran in the direction of where he heard the snapping. When he got there, his eyes widened at what he saw. Leaning next to a tree was a silver-haired man with a regal profile. On his cheeks were purple claw-like markings. The man was wearing ornate samurai armor, and his robes looked to be made of the finest silk. Naruto began to walk closer when he suddenly tripped and landed next to the man. The man turned his head at the sound. He then winced as he coughed up some blood. He began to pant as he felt the life draining from him. In a short time Jinsuke Inugami would be dead. Naruto looked up and saw that the man had amber-slitted eyes. The man looked at Naruto, and the look on his face showed that he was in pain. Naruto saw the wound and panicked. Oh my god, he is bleeding. He thought about heading back to the village to get Tsunade, but he stopped at the mention of the woman of the 3 Sannin. Orochimaru was the only one who took genuine care of him. Tsunade had been extremely favoritist towards Natsuki, and Jiraiya was no different. Even when he asked for their help, they ignored him. It would not surprise him if they ignored him today. Naruto slumped to the ground and began to let a few tears fall. Jinsuke saw this. Child Naruto froze at the sound of his voice. Why are you crying? Naruto slowly turned his head towards the dying man. Why you're bleeding and I can't do anything about it. Naruto began to cry again as the man gently smiled. Come here, child. Naruto looked up. Please. Naruto swallowed as he slowly began to scoot towards the man. He stopped when he was only a few feet away from Jinsuke. Tell me, child, why are you out here alone? Where are your parents? Naruto flinched and snarled at the mention of parents. It's a long story. Jinsuke smiled as he placed his hand on the blonde's shoulder. I like long stories. Naruto looked at the man and he sighed as he began to tell the Inuyuki his story, his parents, his sister, the neglect, everything. When the story was finally over 2 hours had passed. Jinsuke gave Naruto a sad look. Poor child, neglected because of a bloodline. Why did we demons create them in the first place? He placed his hand under Naruto's chin and forced him to look at him. Naruto, do you wish to be free of your fate? Naruto's eyes widened. Do you wish to become strong without your parents' blood, without their expectations? Naruto nodded his head. But how can I be free of that fate? Jinsuke signaled for Naruto to come closer to him. Naruto walked next to the demon. Naruto, I am dying, but if I die then someone will take my place. As demon lord of these lands, while you are not ready yet, you show the heart to properly lead my realm of power. Naruto's eyes widened. I wish for you to grow strong, carry on my legacy, and then rule my lands. Jinsuke placed his hand over Naruto's forehead. If you accept, you will become a full-blooded demon, and your potential will be endless, but you will never have relation to your family again. Do you want this? Naruto looked down. Out of the entire clan, Natsuki, Hiroshi, and Nanashiro were the only ones to treat him right. He thought of the clan laws. If he was not of blood relation, then the clan could do nothing to control him. He would be free. He sighed to himself. I am sorry, Amuto, and then nodded his head. Jinsuke smiled. Then by the power vested in me I proclaim you my heir. A golden energy flowed from his body and into Naruto's forehead. Naruto's eyes glowed a bright violet as his hair began to grow light, almost a platinum blonde, Ino's hair color. His nails lengthened and sharpened into claws. His skin turned a paler color, and the same purple marks on his own face now adorned Naruto's, but rather than just the one on each cheek, there were 3 on each cheek. Naruto collapsed to the ground as he began to pant for breath. Suddenly the body of Jinsuke glowed as the swords rushed towards Naruto. They attached themselves to him as an energy swept over the blonde. The swords glowed and disappeared into 3 seals as Naruto collapsed. The body of Jinsuke turned incredibly pale as it began to crumble away, armor, skin, clothes, and all. He had one last smile on his face. Be strong, Naruto, and be strong, my family. He disappeared in the wind as his sword fell. Not 10 feet away, Sesshomaru, Izayoi, Totosai, and Myoga had watched the exchange between the two. Sesshomaru was crying. His father was dead. But then he looked at the blonde, who his father had chosen to be his heir, and he wiped away his tears, not wanting to appear weak in front of his father's chosen. Izayoi cooed to Inuyasha, who began to sniffle, as if he subconsciously knew his father was dead. She let a tear fall that her love was dead, but she steeled herself, knowing this boy was going to need her help. Myoga and Totosai nodded to each other. Totosai walked forward but stopped when he saw a man appear in front of Naruto. Naruto saw the man appear in front of him and groaned. It was Naruto, one of the Namikes and his direct cousin. All in all, he was one of the few inbred left in the Namikaze clan from when the clan believed inbreeding would be beneficial to their bloodline. Naruto spoke in a rather odd voice due to his speech impediment. Naruto, your father requests that you come to the council chamber immediately. The man grabbed Naruto's collar and shined off to the village. The 5 in the bushes ran over to where Naruto was. Myoga began sniffing. He then looked up at Izayoi. He went that way. He pointed in the direction of Konoha. The group then began to run towards the village. Naruto appeared before the council of elders in the Uzumaki Namikaze compound, and unceremoniously dropped Naruto. Naruto cringed, and then pushed himself up. In front of him were the elders of the Uzumaki and Namikaze clans, all of them looking at him with cold expressions. At the head of the council were his mother and father looking at him with calculating eyes. Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Orochimaru sat on the side, with Orochimaru casting a worried glance towards Naruto. Minato stood up and spoke. This council is in session. We will begin with the discussion on my son's place as clan heir. The elders nodded their heads as the head elder of the Uzumaki clan spoke up. Minato, we have seen Naruto's skills in combat, and they are far from acceptable. He shows no capability in the Uzumaki clan style. An elder of the Namikaze clan spoke up. True, he has not been able to properly use our style, and he cannot even activate his mother's bloodline. The elders conversed, and then Orochimaru stood up. That is a load of shit. True, he is not capable of using your clan styles, but he is far more capable than you give him credit for. An elder stood up and sneered at Orochimaru. How dare you interfere, Madarashi? This is a clan matter, and the elder was silenced by the one sitting next to him. Actually, Orochimaru has full rights to express his feelings, what with being Naruto's caretaker and all, and he does raise good points. The elders looked at her. Kushina spoke up. Explain, Elder-sama. It was a demand, not so much a question. The elder stood and spoke. While Naruto expressed no ability in our clan styles, he expressed great ability in the Uchiha style of fighting. The elders began whispering. True, the Uchihas were not well liked in the clan, but they had to admit that their techniques were far beyond their own reach. On top of that, he trains far more than most of our clan members. If he had the bloodline, he would be quite powerful. An elder spoke up. But he does not have his bloodline, or perhaps the elder looked at Naruto. He has activated it, and has yet to show us. The elders looked at him expectantly. Minato and Kushina looked at Naruto. Minato spoke. Naruto, if you wish to keep your status as heir, then show us your bloodline. Everyone looked at Naruto. Naruto scowled as he answered. I haven't activated it. He looked at the reactions. The elders were looking at him without emotion, and his parents looked disappointed. Orochimaru looked down. Naruto, I am sorry. He was about to look back at Naruto when Tsunade spoke up. Figures, he will never be as talented as his sister. He snapped his head towards Tsunade, who had a smile on her face. Jiraiya gave her a perverted grin. Right, you are my heim. There is no way Naruto will ever surpass Natsuki. Orochimaru snarled at the two as he reached for his Kusanagi. He then turned his attention towards Naruto. Minato sighed. I guess you will never be strong enough to lead this clan. He leaned forwards with a smile on his face. But at the very least you can provide us with some political power. He pulled out a form. I have arranged you to marry the daughter of the Hokage. In the event that you should be unable to secure your position as clan head, you will meet her tomorrow at the treaty signing. Tsunade frowned. Well, I guess he can be useful to the clan. That simply secures that his sister will obtain heir status. Jiraiya grinned. Yeah, and the fact his fiancée is hot is a bonus. Jiraiya had spied on the Hokage entourage and saw that the Hokage's daughter, who was 3 years Naruto's senior, was quite lovely and the Jinchuriki of the Nibi. Orochimaru scowled. You bastard. Minato stood up. Meeting ADJ. Before Minato could finish his sentence, Naruto stood up and screamed. I refuse. Everyone looked at the blonde as he released a small amount of killing intent. They then looked at his features. He had changed, not considerably, but enough so that he was different. It was a surprise that they did not notice. His whisker marks were now jagged, and had a purple color to it. His eyes had become slitted, and now had an amber hue to them. His hair was lighter, almost like the Yamanaka's. His skin was much paler, and his nails were now claws. Minato looked at his son and with an angered voice asked, What do you mean? He clutched the seat as his son spoke. I refuse to be married off to some girl I have never even met, just so your clan can have a bit more power. The clan elders looked at Naruto in shock. One extremely arrogant member spoke up. How dare you? You should be honored that you will bring power to your clan. Naruto glared at the councilman as a smirk graced his features. Even if I was to marry the girl, it would bring no glory to your clan. Everyone was confused at this. What was Naruto talking about? Kushina chose to voice the question. What are you talking about? You are a member of this clan. Anything that has notoriety will bring honor and power to this clan. Kushina looked at her son as he began to chuckle, until it grew into full-blown laughter. That is where you are wrong, bitch. The elders were shocked that Naruto had called his mother a bitch. On the side, the Sannin were having interesting reactions. Tsunade was fuming, Jiraiya was babbling, and Orochimaru was trying and failing to hold in his laughter. Kushina was wide-eyed and slack-jawed. She then grit her teeth as she narrowed her eyes at her son. What did you call me? The question was asked with so much venom that it made the elders shudder. Naruto merely smirked at her. You heard me. I called you a bitch. Oh no, you are worse than that. Because a female dog does not favor one child for another. Kushina's eyes widened. And I am no longer a member of this clan, nor will I ever be again, so none of you have any say over what I do. Naruto smirked as he saw the elders' looks of shock. Minato quirked an eyebrow and spoke. What are you talking about? Naruto looked at Minato. Isn't it obvious by my new look? Surely the clan head would know what happened to a human who is given power by a demon. What? The elders all stood up as Minato yelled. What demon? There is no demon in this village. If there was, we would have sealed it up and used it as our weapon. Naruto glared at the yondaime and spoke. Of course there isn't a demon in this village. It is dead and granted me its power. The elders conversed, and then a very power-hungry elder spoke. In that case he must be branded. Naruto snarled at the man branding. It was an old custom used by the Namikaze clan, which the Hyuga adopted. However, the brand used by the Hyuga was far less dangerous than the one the Namikaze clan uses. The caged bird seal was nothing like the Namikaze shattered wings seal. The Namikaze seal would destroy all free will on the seal holder, and would be little more than a puppet. The seal was forbidden over 30 years ago, and for someone to bring up the topic was surprising. Orochimaru stood up and yelled, "Are you fucking serious? You would put the seal on him because he does not wish to be a member of this clan anymore?" The elders looked as Orochimaru walked next to Naruto. "Naruto has pushed himself to extremes so much that it surprises me, and because he wishes to be free of your arrogance you choose to seal him?" The elders were confused. Freedom? Orochimaru smirked. "I am sure you remember clan laws." He pulled out a scroll and unfurled it. He looked down the scroll and smiled. According to the law, instated by Lord Nagarashi Namikaze, lord of the Namikaze clan during Konoha's founding, all clan members who were not of blood relation to the clan did not fall under the clan's rule. He whipped the scroll and smiled at the clans. It was something he placed in when a good portion of the clan began to use forbidden justices to free themselves of their Namikaze lineage. The elders screamed in outrage. For 6 years the Namikaze clan had been trying to get a demon under their thumb, and when they finally get that chance it is taken away from them by their own laws. Minato looked down and sighed. "Very well." The elders looked at Minato as if he was crazy. "You may leave, Naruto." He sat down and folded his hands in front of him. Naruto smirked and turned towards the door. Orochimaru smiled as he walked back to his seat next to Jiraiya and Tsunade, who were both fuming with Naruto. Naruto went to his room and grabbed what few possessions he truly treasured: a picture of him and Natsuki, a knife from Hiroshi, another knife from Nanisher, and a group picture of him, Nanisher, Natsuki, Hiroshi, and Orochimaru, standing next to an old sakura blossom tree. He packed up all of the items and jumped out the first-story window. He began to walk towards the gate. "Aniki!" He turned around as he was glomped by Natsuki, who began to cry into his chest. "Tell me it isn't true. Tell me you aren't leaving, please." Naruto cringed as he heard the begging sound of her voice. He wrapped his arms around her and spoke. "I am sorry, Amuto, but I can't stand this clan anymore." He brought her chin up. "Grow strong, be a proper leader for your clan." He picked up his bag and walked through the gates, but he suddenly stopped. He turned towards his sister and gave her a swift kiss on the lips before he ran out. Natsuki gently touched her lips and smiled. "Aniki kissed me." She smiled as she walked back to the compound, but she frowned as she thought about her Aniki. She clutched her heart as she began to sob. Naruto was walking around town. He was hoping he could find a place where he could rest, but he found absolutely nothing. He finally decided to just camp out in a nearby forest. He walked all around to find a good forest until he found a barbed wire fence. Beyond it was a menagerie of trees. He shrugged and hoisted himself over the fence, never noticing the sign that said, "Forest of Death." In the forest, Shirayuki was playing in a grove of flowers. The 6-year-old wolf Demoness, along with her parents, had moved to the Forest of Death when their old homelands were destroyed by a demon from the eastern lands. She was a prodigy. She could change between her human and wolf forms. The wolves of the forest completely obeyed her, and she was the first wolf in the clan to be born with their holy trait. She had the power to heal. She was the first white wolf in over 1,000 years. On the side, Koga and Ayam were looking at their daughter of their clan. Only the 3 were left alive. They chose to live in a human settlement, because most demons did not want to deal with humans. The parents looked into the night sky as a full moon bloomed. A mile from Konoha, the Reikage, older brother to Kumo's Hachibi Jinchuriki, and father to Kumo's Nibi Jinchuriki, was speaking to his entourage. "Alright, so just to make sure we are clear. While I and Yujito speak to the Namikaze, you 2 will go ahead of us and kidnap a young Hyuga. I do not care whether it is male or female, but they must be of the main branch. While you 2 are getting away with the girl, we will be diverting the Yandame's gaze and making sure we get the Namikaze and Uzumaki Kekii Genkai." The Reikage looked at his 2 subordinates. The 2 bowed. "Understood, Reikage-sama." The 2 disappeared in a lightning shunshin as he walked back to the campsite. The group would be arriving in Konoha in 2 days. Tomorrow his subordinates would be making a treaty with Konoha, and then they would steal a Hyuga. The next day he would come and would arrange a marriage between his daughter and the Namikaze heir. It was foolproof. He would get 3 bloodlines for Kumo in no time. Next day Naruto opened his eyes to see the sun rising. He got up and groaned as he got down from the trees. He walked back to the fence and crawled over it. Once he touched the ground he began to walk back towards the village, thinking he might be able to find a home, unaware that another family was doing just that. Inagami family? Izaoi was reading through a catalog while they began to move stuff into their new house. When they arrived at the village the day before, they were so tired that they could not get the motivation to locate the blonde who had been named Jinsuke's heir. They had managed, however, to purchase a nice house in the residential district. It was a 5-bedroom house. It had a large yard, a wall that kept out most civilians, a nice little koi pond in the middle of the yard, and the house itself was 3 floors. They had managed to get the house for a sweet price. The only issue with the house was the work that needed to be done. The wall had to be rebuilt, the house needed better insulation, and the grass was dying. The house used to belong to a now extinct clan, but since their deaths over 4 years ago, no one had bothered to fix it up. Although the clan libraries had been ransacked, but the only footprints came in, not out. so no one was able to determine who did it. Besides that, Izayoi was reading a catalog on various furniture, some of it was very nice. Totosai was lugging the furniture up to the house. I am too old for this. He looked around when he suddenly felt a familiar energy. He dropped the sofa he was carrying and looked to where he felt the energy, and saw the blonde boy walking through the town. Totosai yelled, Izayoi, Myoga, Sesshomaru the kid from yesterday just walked past the house. Izayoi jumped from her seat, Myoga hopped onto her shoulder, and Sesshomaru came running out of the house holding a cat with a red bow on its ear. When everyone questioned him about it, he said, "It was cute." They left it at that and walked out of the compound. Later, the Inagami family had not been able to find Naruto. They had been searching for him since the morning, and it was now late noon. They had gone from the residential district to the clan district, and they could not find him. Izayoi had tried asking around, but no one had seen him. The best lead they got was just some practical joker, and they ended up getting pelted with water balloons. They finally decided to give up and pick up the search later. Sesshomaru was glum as he thought to himself, if I could use my senses properly I could find him. Sesshomaru sighed and then his nose twitched. He looked up and began to sniff around. He found a scent, and it was just like his father's. He yelled back to the group, "Hey guys, I found his scent." They all looked back at him. They shrugged their shoulders and went after the young Yuki. Myoga was looking down in shame. If he hadn't engorged himself as soon as he got to the village he would not have forgotten the scent. But he was glad that Sesshomaru found the scent. If the group had stayed put, they would have seen a man jumping over the rooftops with a young girl on his shoulders, bound and gagged. With Naruto. Naruto had returned to the Forest of Death after he had gone around looking for a place to live. He had found a house that was up for sale, had been purchased the day before. He walked by it. He was kind of glad he had not tried to buy it. He looked at his wallet. It had 1 million in real notes in it, more than enough to purchase a house, and enough to give him a decent apartment for the next few years. He sighed as he tried to get to sleep until he heard snapping of twigs. He got up and looked and found the ambassador from Kumo carrying a young girl over his shoulder. He seemed to be awaiting something. He saw who was on his shoulders and his eyes narrowed. It was a Hyuga, the only clan in Konoha that could honestly say that not one member of their clan ever did not unlock their Kekkei Jinkai. He watched as the man looked into the woods as he heard twigs snapping. Another man came out of the woods, carrying a young white-haired girl on his shoulders. Naruto's eyes widened when he saw that the girl was a wolf demoness. The two began to talk. "I thought we were only supposed to get the Hyuga heiress." Naruto's eyes widened. So that was their ploy. "Yeah, but a wolf demoness. Once she is of breeding age we will have an unstoppable army of Hanyos at our disposal." Naruto snarled at the men. He knew what they were thinking. Naruto snapped his head up when he heard yells in the direction the ambassador came in, and wolf howls in the direction the other man came from. The two men cursed and ran in his direction. He hid under the bark and watched as the men sat where he used to be standing. The men set down the two girls who were utterly terrified. They watched as a group of Hyugas and two incredibly angry wolf demons came crashing out of the forest. Hinata and Shirayuki watched as their families looked at each other, as the killing intent built up. They began to whimper as the two groups got ready to attack each other. The wolf demons attacked the Hyuga and the Hyuga defended. The two men were smirking evil sadistic smiles as they watched the two groups try and kill each other. The ambassador spoke up, "Hey, how about we sit and watch the finale? We won't be found here." The other man agreed and they watched as the two groups were trying to kill each other. Shirayuki whimpered while Hinata cried. They were about to try to scream when Naruto appeared in front of them, signaling them to remain quiet. He reached towards them and used his dagger to cut their bonds. He then turned towards the two men and screamed, "Eat this." The two men did not have time to turn around as Naruto shoved his dagger into the other man's back while he kicked the ambassador into the fray. The two groups saw the ambassador fall out of the trees. Ayame and Koga saw Shirayuki and yelled, "Shirayuki!" They were about to run towards her when a Hyuga slammed a Juken strike into their hearts. Shirayuki saw this and screamed, "No, Kei-chan to USA," and she jumped down, sprained her ankle, and limped over to her parents' forms. Meanwhile the Hyuga were tending to Hinata. They then turned to finish off the wolf demons but they stopped when they saw Shirayuki sobbing over their forms. Shirayuki was crying over her mother's body. "No, Ka-chan, Ka-chan," she continued to sob. "Shirayuki?" Shirayuki looked at her mother and screamed in joy. She wrapped her mother up in a hug and sobbed, "Ka-chan, you're alive." Ayame coughed up some blood that landed on Shirayuki's clothes. She saw the blood and screamed, "No, Ka-chan. Please don't die. I can't lose you in Tucson. Please don't leave me." She watched as her mother's eyes closed, and her body go limp. She began to panic as she shook her mother's form. "Ka-chan?" No response. "Ka-chan?" Nothing. She screamed as she began to sob, "Kei-chan." She shoved her face into the demon wolf's fur and sobbed into it. Suddenly the bushes parted as Sesshomaru, Izayoi, Totosai, and Myoga entered the clearing. They saw the spectacle before them and gasped. 2 wolf demons, and 3 Hyuga dead. They saw the young Shirayuki crying over the female wolf demon's corpse. They chose to stay back as the AB began to pour into the clearing led by Kakashi Hatake. The next day, council chambers. The council had convened to discuss what was to happen. Unlike the former council, all votes were equal. There was no longer a higher vote for prestigious clans, and civilians no longer had any say in shinobi affairs. The Hokage had no more say in council decisions than anyone else. It was purely the council's decision when an issue was brought before it. Currently that issue was with the still living Kumo ambassador. Hayashi Hyuga stood and glared at the Kumo ambassador. You are hereby charged with attempted kidnapping of a member of an allied village. How do you plead? The Kumo ambassador stuttered out. And not guilty. He was silenced by a dose of killing intent from the head of the ANBU division. Don't you lie to us. We have undeniable evidence that you kidnapped the Hyuga heiress. This trial is useless. He has broken treaty agreements, and thus we should kill him. The ANBU was about to move when he was stopped by a large bear-like man. I disagree. Everyone looked to find Ibiki Marino standing at the council doors. The Kumo ambassador began to quiver at the sight of the man. Ibiki was renowned as the most brutal interrogator in the history of Konoha. He stood in front of the council. Give me a few hours with him, and then you can kill him. The ambassador's eyes widened. He turned to the council, who began to converse. Hayashi smirked evilly and spoke. By all means, Ibiki-kun. Ibiki smirked as he placed his hand on the ambassador's shoulder as he shunned from the room to his interrogation room. The council then turned their heads towards the others in the room, the Inugami family, Naruto, and the still trembling Shiryuki. A civilian councilman spoke. The next order of business is what do with the demoness. Shiryuki trembled as the council began to speak. A pink-haired councilwoman stood up. I say we lock her up, and when she comes of age use her to breed an army of Hanyu. The civilian council roared in approval. Shiryuki began to sob as she trembled even more. Izayoi saw this and stood up. You fools disgust me. You would take an innocent girl, whose parents are now dead, lock her up like an animal, and then once she can hold a child, rape her into submission? The civilians looked at Izayoi. The Haruno head spoke up. And who are you? Izayoi sneered at the Haruno. I am Izayoi Inugami, widow of the demon lord of the western lands. She pointed to Naruto and Shiryuki, and their legal guardian. The counselors on the civilian side roared in disapproval, but Fugaku quickly silenced them. Silence, she has a right to speak. Please, Izayoi, explain how you are the legal guardian of Naruto, and the young demoness. Izayoi bowed to Fugaku and spoke. My husband named Naruto his heir. As the wife of the Inu no Teisho, it is my duty to train his heir to be the lord of the western lands, and according to an alliance between the Inu and Ukami demon tribes, should a member of either family find an orphan of either clan, they are to take custody of the orphan and raise it as their own. The council deliberated this, but the Haruno head clearly was not convinced. This is bullshit. I say we take the demoness and make her a breeding vessel. Until the woman was silenced by a dose of killing intent coming from the end of the table. The councilors looked to see that Danzo Muira, the head of the ANBU Root Division, was snarling at the Haruno head. Shut your fucking mouth, you wretched whore. How dare you make a suggestion like that? Danzo was extremely hateful to the idea of using women for breeding stock. He had the displeasure of leading a mission into an IWA camp when he was young, and found over a dozen girls being raped and impregnated for their own bloodline, including his own sister. Since then he has utterly loathed and despised rapists, and people who would use someone as a breeding factory just for power. The council agreed as Hamura and Kohara stood up. It has been decided Shiryuki will be in the care of the Inugami family, and Naruto, since he has forsaken his clan, will now be a member of the Inugami family. Meeting adjourned. The council stood up to leave, but the Haruno head glared at the Inugami family. Damn you, this is not Overkin of Jinsuki. The Haruno head's eyes glowed crimson as she faded into the shadows and suddenly disappeared. The Reikage walked through the village gates. At his side was his daughter, Yujuto-ni, his wife, Mitsuki-ni, his brother, Kurabi Yatsuki, and his personal guard. They walked through the village and were surprised to see the hateful glares being directed their way. Kurabi reached for one of his swords, along with the rest of the Reikage guard. They looked up into the sky. It was almost time for the treaty signing, so they hurried their footsteps and did a beeline towards the Hokage Tower. Once they managed to reach the Hokage Tower, they were shocked to see so many ANBU protecting the place. Then again, it was not surprising considering that it was a peace signing between two of the 5 nations. There would definitely be a lot of people who would want to stop such an alliance. They waited for a few minutes until an ANBU appeared before them. If you would follow me please. The ANBU began to walk up the steps as they headed for the council chambers. Kurabi and Yujuto were looking around, not having a good feeling about this treaty signing. Kurabi clutched 2 of his swords and Yujuto clinged herself to her mother's leg. Mitsuki looked at her daughter. The two were basically carbon copies of each other, same blonde hair, same pale skin, while Yujuto's was slightly darker than hers, but the two looked almost exactly alike. Kurabi looked at his niece. She must feel it too. Hachibi, I have a bad feeling about this. His demon spoke. As you should. Something is not right here. Keep at the ready. Kurabi turned to see they had arrived at a set of doors. The ANBU opened the doors and the group walked inside. The Reikage looked around, taking in the individuals in the room. Each of the clan heads, the heads of each shinobi division, and the Yondaime himself, were all sitting around a large table. The Yondaime smiled at the Reikage. Ah, Reikage-sama, how nice of you to join us. Please take a seat. The Reikage took a seat, along with Yujuto, Mitsuki, and Kurabi. The council looked at Minato as he stood. Now Reikage-sama, you came here to finalize a marriage between my son and your daughter. The Reikage nodded his head. Well, I am sad to say that my son is no longer under my rule, so I cannot arrange that. The Reikage stood up and snapped. What do you mean? Minato answered. My son found a loophole in my clan's laws, and he freed himself of the council's rule. Any marriages to outside clans in the Namikaze family has to be commanded by the council. However, since Naruto has found a way to free himself of the council's rule, this is not possible. The Raikage sat down. I see. I am sorry that we wasted your time, Hokage-sama. The Raikage got up. Oh, but you didn't waste our time, Raikage Dano. The Raikage looked at a smirking Jiraiya, who was the head of the Kazama clan. What do you mean? Most of the council smirked as Minato snapped his fingers, and under a second Anbu surrounded the Raikage and his entourage, weapons poised. Ibiki shined in front of the Raikage with the ambassador. I mean, Raikage-sama, that you have already broken treaty agreements with Konoha, when you had your ambassador attempt to kidnap the Hyuga heiress, causing the death of Hisashi Hyuga, head of the branch family, and the death of 2 other main branch members. Ibiki threw the ambassador in front of the Raikage. We got all our information from your ambassador. I have to admit it was a clever ploy. Minato got up from his seat. Arranging a marriage between my son and your daughter, nearly assuring that your clan gets the Namikaze and Uzumaki bloodlines, and then while we were distracted, you kidnapped the Hyuga heiress, gaining the Hyuga Kekkai Genkai in one night, capturing the Saishugan, Byakugan, and the Uzumaki superior body bloodline. Minato continued with his rant. Just imagine a group of soldier with the capability to study and break down any seal, see chakra in 360 foot of vision, and be able to gain 3 times the benefit of training in a third of the time, nearly an unstoppable force with 2 Jinchuriki to back them up. Minato stood next to the Raikage, but all in all a futile effort. He walked back to his seat as his Anbu grabbed Mitsuki and Yujito. Get your hands off my family. The Raikage stood and was about to attack when an Anbu poised his blade to kill Yujito. He immediately stopped. He lowered his fist as he stared into his daughter's terrified eyes. I am afraid that Konoha will need compensation for the loss of 3 of our finest shinobi. Minato stared at the 2 girls being restrained. Perhaps we can come to an agreement, Raikage-sama. The Raikage turned towards Minato. In return to agree to our demands, we will not declare war on Kumo. The Raikage looked at Minato. What do you want? Minato smiled. To compensate for the loss of 3 great shinobi, your daughter will remain in Konoha, and will serve it until death. The Raikage released a substantial amount of killing intent. And what the fuck makes you think I will leave my own flesh and blood here? He was silenced when he heard his daughter whimper. He looked to see that the Anbu holding her was starting to crush her arm. Minato spoke. Either she stays here or all of you die, and then we wipe Kumo off the face of the map. Your choice. Minato looked as the Raikage looked down. He was left with a choice, one that was near impossible to make. He had to choose between his village and his daughter. If he chose his village, his daughter may never see him again, and the village would be safe. If he chose his daughter, they would be killed and Kumo would be butchered. Kumo was not as strong as it used to be, and so he made his choice, breaking his heart. The Raikage looked at his daughter with tears flowing down his face. He mouthed, I'm sorry. He turned back to Minato. I accept the terms, but please make sure she has a good role model. Minato smiled. Of course. He turned to Jiraiya. Jiraiya, I will be placing you in charge of Yujito. I suggest that. Minato was cut off by Orochimaru. You would place the girl with someone like Jiraiya? The Raikage was not happy either. I will not have my daughter placed with a man that will peep on her when she bathes. The reactions continued until Minato spoke. Jiraiya shows the most promise of teaching the girl to control her bijou, and I have no qualms with Jiraiya taking care of her. Jiraiya looked at Minato and smiled. Well, I better go, and he was cut off by Danzo. That is not true, Minato. My sister knows how to control demonic chakra far better than Jiraiya does. I would suggest that perhaps I be her legal guardian while she is in this village. Minato pondered this for a moment. He then sighed. Very well, Danzomwara, you are hereby charged with taking care of Yujito ni. I expect results within the year, otherwise I will turn her over to Jiraiya. Minato stood, but Mitsuki yelled out, Wait! Everyone looked at her. Please, I wish to stay with my daughter. The council looked at Minato. He looked down, and then nodded his head. Mitsuki did a curt bow and then walked over to her daughter. Minato looked towards the council. Meeting adjourned. In Raikage-sama, you have until tomorrow for you and your entourage to get out of this village. Your wife and daughter will remain here. The Raikage stiffly nodded his head as most of the shinobi shined out of the room. The Raikage fell to the floor into a heap as he let a waterfall of ears fall. His wife and child came to console him as Kurabi looked at Danzo. The look between Kurabi and Danzo was like a mutual conversation. Kurabi nodded as he patted Danzo on the shoulder. Keep them safe or else. He walked over to his family. Danzo looked at the family and sighed. Once again, Minato, you have broken a family to bits, all for your ambitions. Danzo walked over to the family. If the 4 of you will follow me, I will bring you to your new home. The family stood and followed Danzo as he led Mitsuki and Yujito to their new home route headquarters, Inagami House. Izayoi had returned from the market. She had heard about a council meeting today, but because her family did not yet have enough prestige in the village to warrant their place on the council, she walked through the gates and heard crying. She turned in the direction of the crying and saw Shirayuki. She was sobbing over the koi pond. Izayoi walked up to the girl. Shirayuki sobbed as she remembered how her parents were killed. She was playing in the grove of flowers, and the man had snatched her up. He had managed to tie her up before her parents came out of their hut. Hearing her whimpers, she sobbed as she remembered the life leaving her mother's body. She curled herself into a ball as she whimpered. She flinched as she felt Izayoi's arms wrap around her. Sure, don't fret, Shirayuki, we will keep you safe. Shirayuki turned around and shoved her face into Izayoi's chest and sobbed into it. Izayoi began to caress the young demoness hair. Off on the side, Naruto was talking to Sesshomaru, Totosai, and Myoga. So what you are saying is that your father named me the Lord of the Western Lands, which includes all of the elemental nations from Chan no Kuni, to beyond the borders of Tori no Kuni, along with several nations across the seas from Tori no Kuni? Totosai stepped in. Actually you are merely the heir, and you will only rule over the demons. Towards the east are other demons that will try to kill you to obtain your power. They will not make a move for the next 10 years, so for now, you do not need to worry. It takes a long time for news of a demon lord's death to get around, so for now, we will need to train you, but we need to get those swords out of the seals. Naruto looked confused. What seals? Myoga jumped onto Naruto's neck and pointed to a seal array on his neck. It held Sounga. He then jumped to Naruto's hip and pointed to 2 seal arrays. One contained Tenseiga, and another contained Tesseiga. Lord Jinsuke crafted 2 of those swords from his fangs. The other one is an ancient blade, older than any demon. It is so powerful that only Jinsuke was strong enough to wield it. Myoga explained. However, the sword itself was made from a rare mineral not found on this plane of existence. Naruto got closer. The mineral was taken from the netherworld. It is evil incarnate, and only one who is strong enough to resist its dark energies will ever be able to wield it. Naruto nodded his head. He turned and saw Izayoi walking to him with Shirayuki standing next to her. Naruto, I would like you to meet Shirayuki. She will be living with us. You two did not get properly acquainted, so perhaps the 2 of you can get to know each other. She looked at Totosai and Myoga and sent a cold glare at them with a sickeningly sweet smile. Right, the 2 quickly nodded their heads as they both had their own thoughts. Such is the fate of a flea. I am too old for this. The 3 walked away as Shirayuki, Naruto, and Sesshomaru sat down. Shirayuki was the first to speak. Naruto-sama, I understand that you are now the heir to the Western Lands, and I understand that because of your position, I am inclined to do as you ask, will not complain, and I will do anything that you ask of me. Shirayuki spoke in a depressed voice. Naruto looked at her. Anything? She nodded her head. Alright then, I order you to stop calling me Naruto-sama. Sesshomaru and Shirayuki were taken back by this. I understand that I am the heir to the Western Lands, but I will not abuse my authority. I don't want you to be my servant, I want you to be my friend. Shirayuki's eyes widened as Naruto walked over to her. We are family here and we will protect each other, okay? He got his response when Shirayuki latched onto him and sobbed into his chest. Naruto gently patted her back as Sesshomaru chuckled. Naruto-sama has a girlfriend. Naruto grumbled as he answered Sesshomaru. Go play with your cat. Sesshomaru scowled as he went to his room to play with the demon cat. Yes, it is Tora. While Naruto comforted the girl. Root headquarters. Danzo opened the doors to his headquarters and they were immediately swarmed with ANBU. He held up his hand and they immediately dispersed. He turned towards the 4 with him. This is my special root base. I train children to become excellent shinobi. I have to keep most of my operations hidden because I do not trust the yondaime. Please follow me. I will introduce the family. The 4 followed him as he walked down a set of stairs. They entered a long hallway with doors adjacent to each other on both sides. They walked down the hallway until he stopped in front of a door. It had ornate designs on it. He pulled out a tri-pronged key with dozens of seals on it. He placed the key in the lock and opened the door. The group followed him in and they saw who was inside. There was a woman about 65 years of age. She was holding a sewing needle and was sewing a cloth. Danzo walked up to her and spoke. Emuro, the woman looked at Danzo. Emuro, how are you feeling? The woman smiled as she hugged her brother. Danzo got up. He then turned to the group behind him. This is my sister Delilah. She understands many concepts on how to control demonic chakra. She will assist Yujito in her training. The group nodded as Yujito walked up to the woman. Hello, my name is Yujito. Delilah smiled. Hello, Yujito. My name is Delilah. The 2 conversed while the family off on the side looked at the touching scene. Time skip. A year later, Naruto, at 7 years old, was now learning how to control a portion of his demonic aura. Sesshomaru was having a slightly easier time, but Naruto's strikes were far more powerful. Totosai were conversing on why this must be. Totosai, perhaps, if you examined one of his fangs, you would be able to discern the energies flowing within it. Maybe enough so that we could find out how Master Naruto can properly control it. Totosai got a pondering look on his face. It is possible, but we would need him to charge the Fang with a bit of his power. Not too much, as the Fang may become unstable, but just enough that we will be able to discern why he is having so much trouble with his power. The 2 nodded as they looked back to what was once a training field. The field was layered with craters, cracks, and uprooted trees. The field looked like a war zone. In the middle of the field, Naruto and Sesshomaru were trying to get their energy whips to properly work. Sesshomaru was having an easier time, and was able to hold an energy whip for a total of 10 seconds. His whip was a venomous-looking green color. Naruto was able to hold an energy whip for 5 seconds, and it looked like a deep green mixed with a hint of purple. Sesshomaru was able to do 2 at once, but Naruto could not focus it properly. He looked at the tips of his fingers. Damn it, why can't I get this? Alright Naruto, think, why can't you focus demonic energy through your fingers properly? Naruto sat down and began to meditate, trying to feel the demonic energy as it flowed through his fingertips. Wait a minute, tips as in plural? Naruto focused harder and found the problem. His demonic energy was too chaotic to focus into just one long whip. It had to be separated. Naruto focused his demonic energy in the direction it was already going in, and from each of his fingertips came a long whip. Sesshomaru stood back in shock as he saw the reddish-purple whips of demonic energy. Totosai and Myoga were shocked. Off to the side Aoi was beaming with pride for what her family had accomplished, and Shirayuki was blushing as she looked at the demon lord who in the last year had changed considerably. His hair was longer, it reached to his shoulder blades. The hair was mostly silver, but where his hair was tied into a knot, where it would then spike up, were small hints of blonde or crimson. He also had a bang go over his eyebrow, much like the Yamanaka style, but much shorter, and it had streaks of crimson in it, and it had just a light hue of blonde in it. He now wore a beautiful battle kimono with basic shoulder pads in the same form as what Jinsuke wore, minus the spikes. On his waist, Tenseiga and Tesseiga were attached to his belt, and Soanga was kept in a special sheath. Shirayuki admired Naruto. She would watch him and compare herself to him to see how far their skills have progressed. She would always watch him as he trained. Sometimes she wondered if watching him as often as she did was healthy. Izoi sighed as she looked at the time. Alright boys, time to go to the academy. Izoi had regretfully chosen to send the two young demons to the academy. After much prodding from Shirayuki, she had also enrolled her into the program. The three were going to start the academy today. Naruto and Sesshomaru stopped using their whips and ran to the house. Sesshomaru got his bokken, along with his armored shoulder pads. They were not as noticeable as Naruto's, but they were made from demon hide. While Naruto's was made from an extremely dense metal he found in a scrapyard, it was amazing what people threw out nowadays. Naruto got in his white battle kimono and got his waist belt for Tesseiga and Tenseiga. On the belt was 2 seals, each one would hold one of the swords. He got his neck collar, which also had a seal on it, a very powerful one at that. It was meant to hold Soanga. Shirayuki got a basic kunoichi battle kimono. On her arms were a set of gauntlets, one that could be lathered in any manner of toxins, the other could channel her yuki. She tied her long white hair in a bun at the top, while the rest flowed down to her shoulder blades. The three walked out the door with Totosai trailing behind them, always mumbling something along the lines of, "Too old or my old bones can't take this." The three demons rolled their eyes as they continued to walk. Naruto turned a corner, and went face first into the person in front of him. He fell forwards as the person he ran into fell backwards. He tried to stop his fall, but he reached out and grabbed something soft. When he landed he reopened his eyes and stared into a set of lavender orbs. Sesshomaru face-palmed and Shirayuki giggled at the position Naruto was in. Naruto was confused by the giggling. He then heard someone EP. He looked down and understood why they were giggling. He was somewhat straddling a girl about the same age as he was. She had short girlish purple hair, and she had a beautiful set of lavender eyes. Naruto quickly got off the girl and had the decency to blush. The young girl got up and began to tap her fingers together. She looked at Naruto, and her eyes widened. Those slash marks on his cheeks. Those same eyes. She got closer to the blonde and started looking him over. Naruto began to feel incredibly uncomfortable as the girl looked at him, especially now that he recognized those eyes. She was a Hyuga. A woman was standing behind the young girl. She looked like an older version of the girl, but with ebony eyes. She saw the former blonde and noticed the same features her daughter was noticing. He couldn't have been that blonde kid, but maybe. She looked at Naruto as Hinata activated her Byakugan. Naruto saw the Kekkei Genkai activate and he snarled. He stood back and reached for his knife holster as his eyes became slitted. The young girl was shocked by this and immediately deactivated her Byakugan as she ran behind the other woman. Meanwhile the woman's sweat dropped. "Oh yeah, it's Naruto, alright. No one else in Konoha has a hatred for bloodlines as much as he does." The woman looked down at the girl and sighed. "Hinata, you have to stop being so intimidated by people. At this rate you will never be able to lead the Hyuga clan." The girl now labeled Hinata looked down and stuttered. "Why yes, Kasi-chan." Naruto's eyes widened as he heard what Hinata called the woman. He looked up to see disappointment in her eyes as she looked at Hinata. She sighed and then turned her head towards the blonde. "Sorry about that, we were heading to the academy," and she wasn't paying attention to her surroundings. Hinata seemed to look down. "I have to drop her off first, but I hope she can keep up. It is not fitting for the heiress to be so slow." Hinata looked down further. Naruto saw the look and sighed. "Sometimes I am too nice for my own good." The two turned to leave. "Wait." Hinata and her mother turned around to see that Naruto had spoken and was now nervously scratching the back of his head. "Perhaps me and my friends could escort Hinata to the academy for you?" The woman raised an eyebrow and then broke into a smile. "Why not?" She sent a stern look towards her daughter. "Now Hinata, I want you to behave and perform at an acceptable level. Do not disappoint me." Hinata's mother walked off as Naruto, Sesshomaru, and Shirayuki walked up to the depressed heiress. Hinata looked up. "Thank you." Naruto sighed. "Look, I may hate bloodlines with a passion, and your clan is renowned for their bloodline, but it will be a cold day in hell before I let someone be put down by their own flesh and blood." He patted Hinata's shoulder. "Come on, let's get to class." Naruto walked by Hinata as Sesshomaru and Shirayuki followed. Hinata turned around and quickly followed as they began to walk towards the academy, a small smile on her face. On the other side of town, Natsuki was being escorted by Nanisher and Hiroshi. Natsuki was looking down. She knew that her brother would be in the academy. Her father had told her that the head of the Inugami family had enrolled the children under her care. Her father was up to something, and it involved her brother. And it would be a cold day in hell before she lost all connections to her brother because of her father. The two groups entered the academy on opposite sides. Naruto looked at the academy and sighed. So this is where my training begins, well better get started. The four children walked up to the academy entrance. Natsuki looked up at the academy as she subconsciously clutched her heart. Aniki she steeled herself and walked up to the gates. Yujito sighed as she began to meditate. Delilah was a great teacher, but she always fell asleep in the middle of their training. Not surprising, she was over 65 years old after all, but she was an extremely fierce fighter, so much so that when the two first sparred, Yujito had no chance to defend herself. Turns out at one time, Delilah was the finest kunoichi in all of the elemental nations. She made Tsunade of the Sannin and Chio of Suna look like fangirls, and that was saying a lot. She once led an assault on IWA itself and cut their forces in half, but it was also on that day that her shinobi career was ended. She had been captured by IWA shinobi. She would have been raped had that Tsuchikage's son not taken a liking to her. That Tsuchikage's son had made her his servant. Out in public he was cruel, but in private he was very caring. He even showed her his power as a Jinchuriki of the Gobi no Irakoma, but it did not last. When her brother invaded IWA to save her, her master managed to help her escape, and because of his treachery, his own father forcibly removed the Gobi from him, killing him. Yujito sighed as she looked at the clock. It was time for her to head out. The yondaime had ordered that she enter the academy, and she would be with the final year students. She got up and grabbed her shinobi gear before heading out. Academy. Naruto walked through the halls of the academy as he looked around. There was a large amount of kids here from various clans, and a good portion of them were bloodline clans. Naruto snarled to himself. As he thought of the word bloodline, he sighed to himself as he found the room they were supposed to go to. He went to open the door. Naruto. Naruto turned and saw Sasuke Uchiha walking up to him. Sasuke was one of the few people he still hung out with. As such, Sasuke knew what changes he had gone through since he left the Uzumaki Namikaze family. Hey Sasuke, how is it going? Sasuke smirked as he stood in front of Naruto. It's alright. I can't believe we are finally in the academy. Sasuke grinned as Naruto pushed open the door. Naruto smiled and walked into the room. His blood ran cold when he saw who was in the room. At the back seat was Natsuki Uzumaki Namikaze, his former Imuto. He looked around and saw an Aburame. He preferred Aburame to most clans, since they technically had no bloodline. He looked around to see who else was in there, and scowled. A good portion of the class was made up of bloodline clans. He scowled. Of all the classes I could have been in, it had to be one that was made up of bloodline users. Per fucking feck. He sighed and was about to walk to a seat. Naruto Niken. He turned and was tackled to the ground by a purple-haired blur. He grunted in pain as he slammed into the ground. He opened his eyes and groaned. Hello Ami. Ami smiled. She was the younger sister of Anko Mitarashi. She was 2 years Naruto's junior, but she was such a prodigy that she had been moved forward a couple grades. Niken, how come you haven't come to visit me? Ami pouted as she got the puppy dog look in her eyes. Naruto groaned, and mentally cursed the person who invented that cheap trick. In the afterlife, Ishicho Sesomaru's mother sneezed as she tried to get a cup of tea, breaking the cup. She turned to the person in the room and gave him the puppy dog look. Could you get me a teacup, please? The man groaned as he walked out of the room. The woman smirked as she thought to herself, works every time. Back in Konoha, Naruto pushed Ami off of him. The young Mitarashi stood up, towering over Naruto by 2 inches. Somehow the girl had managed to get her mother's height. He sighed as he walked down the steps, not noticing the looks going his way. Natsuki was wide-eyed. Is that Naruto? Damn, she found herself blushing as she looked at him. Sakura Haruna looked at Naruto with fire in her eyes. You will soon know my wrath, heir of Jinsuki. She smirked, revealing sharp fangs as she began to ogle the Uchiha. Kiba was looking at Shiryuki. Damn, she is hot. He began drooling as he ogled the young wolf Demonis. Naruto, Sesomaru, Shiryuki, and Hinata sat near the front. They four sat quietly until their teachers came in. Irika Yumino, and Mizuki Tao, the best instructors in the academy. The two Chunin walked to the front of the room. Once they sat down, Mizuki spoke up. Hello, my name is Irika Yumino, and this is my assistant, Mizuki Tao. For the next few years, we will be teaching all of you the structure of shinobi lifestyle. For now, let us introduce ourselves. Please share your likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future. He turned towards Hinata. Miss Hyuga, would you kindly introduce yourself? Hinata gulped as she stood up. And my name is Hinata Hyuga. I like cinnamon buns, my Amuto, and some of my family. I dislike rude people, people who can't see someone's efforts, and people who hurt others. My dream is to be acknowledged by my clan. She sat down as Naruto looked at her. Her own clan has done this to her, made her so timid. He turned back to the front as Irika pointed to another person in the room. This continued until only he, Ami, Sesomaru, Shiryuki, Kiba, Sasuke, and Natsuki were left. Sasuke stood up and answered. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I like tomatoes and my family. I dislike fangirls, and those who cannot take ninja life seriously. My dream is to bring honor to my clan. Ami stood up next. Hi, my name is Ami Mitarashi. I like my family, and French toast, and snakes. I dislike idiots who think kunoichi are weak and can't defend themselves, and other things. My dream is to be just like my Niken and Neisan. Naruto groaned at the mention that she wanted to be like her Neisan. Oh boy, another Anko. Shiryuki looked at the condition of Naruto and sighed. She then stood up and introduced herself. My name is Shiryuki Ukami. I like steak, knives, and my family. I dislike Kumo and those that hurt animals. In my dream she looked down, but her eyes briefly flashed to Naruto, is to help a certain someone with their goals. Kiba stood up and spoke. I am Kiba Inuzuka. I like girls and dogs. I dislike cats, and my dream is to be such a great shinobi that the ladies love me. Kiba was glared at by most of the female class. Sesshomaru sighed as he stood. My name is Sesshomaru Inagami. I like cats, dogs, swords, and fried fish. I dislike how long it takes to cook fish, and people who are lechers. He looked at Kiba. And my dream is to make my father proud. Iruka nodded towards Natsuki. She slowly stood up, never taking her eyes off of Naruto. My name is Natsuki Uzumaki Namikaze. I like certain members of my family, ramen, and a certain someone. I dislike a good majority of my clan, and arrogant people. My dream is to right a wrong committed years ago. Iruka nodded his head and looked towards Naruto, who was slowly nodding off. Naruto opened one eye. Would you kindly introduce yourself to the class? Naruto grumbled as he stood up. Those that saw Naruto were having mixed reactions. Most of the females were blushing. The guys that saw this were glaring at him, and the guys that didn't had no reaction. They expected he would be like any old genin, but what came out of his mouth was not what they expected. My name is Naruto Inagami. I like ramen, steak, and dango, my family, and those I consider precious. He got a cold look in his eyes. I hate Kekkai Genkai of all kinds, most of the clans of Konoha, and a few other choice individuals. Everyone was shocked when he said he hated bloodlines except for Shiryuki, Sesshomaru, Sasuke, and Natsuki. My dream, no, my ambition, is to make a certain lord proud, and carry on his legacy. He sat down as the class gave him odd looks. Iruka looked at the demon. Okay, so now that we have the introductions done with, let's start with the lessons. He turned to the blackboard and began to write on it. Time skipped 2 minutes. Naruto was clutching the side of his desk so hard that his claws were piercing through the other side of it. Sesshomaru and Shiryuki were slowly edging away from the blonde, knowing how he got when issues like the one being presented were brought up. Hinata was looking down as she stole glances at the blonde. Natsuki was looking at her brother with sorrow. The first class was meant to teach students about a certain tool that many legendary shinobi possessed, Kekkai Genkai. The moment the word Kekkai Genkai was brought up, Naruto had to be restrained by Sesshomaru and Shiryuki to calm him down. Once he had been restrained, Iruka had begun his lecture, and with probably the worst choice possible, the Saishugan of the Namikaze family. Iruka finished drawing a diagram of the eye. The eye itself was simply a golden pupil. Nothing really spectacular, it was its abilities that made it renowned. Iruka turned to the class. Alright everyone, today we will be starting our lecture on the Saishugan of one of Konoha's founding clans, the Saishugan. This Kekkai Genkai, along with the Sharingan, Mokutan, and the Kurama family's Genjutsu bloodline are the symbols of our village. Can anyone tell me about the Saishugan? Natsuki raised her hand. Yes, Natsuki, please tell us what you know about the Saishugan. Natsuki stood up and spoke with an air of confidence. The Saishugan is a dojutsu. It belongs to the Namikaze family. It has abilities that allow one to use and understand seals far easier. Iruka nodded his head. Thank you, but would someone like to give a deeper explanation? No one raised their hands. Naruto sighed, but he suddenly felt an itch on his head. He reached up for the itch. Ah, Naruto, he looked towards Iruka. What do you know of the Saishugan? Naruto twitched, cursing his unlucky day. He stood up and sighed, muttering to himself. I really hate this. He then spoke. The Saishugan is a Namikaze clan dojutsu. Like all dojutsu, it has a secondary level, and like all dojutsu, it is in fact a mutation. Everyone looked at Naruto. The Saishugan was a mutation of another bloodline that was also a dojutsu. The Saishugan displays the ability to study and break down any seal, though how advanced the seal is depends on how strong the Saishugan is. The Saishugan also allows those of the Namikaze family to allow them to use particle chakra and the energy around them in their seals. Everyone looked at Naruto, astonished at how much he knew, but he did not look like a Namikaze. Natsuki smiled. Naruto had always known more about the family's Kekkai Genkai than anyone else did. He had studied the Kekkai Genkai to the point that he knew all of their strengths and all of their weakness. Iruka was astonished. Very good, Naruto, but how did you know about the Saishugan's inner workings? You clearly are not a Namikaze. Wrong thing to say, Naruto snarled at Iruka as his eyes glowed an amber color. And I am thankful for that, Iruka-sensei. He sat back down as the class had mixed reactions. Kiba was thinking, trying to look tough for these girls, I bet. Hinata looked at him. Wow, he is smart. Sasuke sighed. Great, here we go again. Sesshomaru and Shiryuki had similar thoughts to Sasuke. The rest of the girls, however, had hearts in their eyes as they looked at him. Iruka coughed. Alright, we will now head outside to display our skills. If you would kindly follow me. He led the academy students outside. Directly next to the classroom was a training field. Iruka stood before the group and spoke. According to new academy standards, we will be displaying any jutsu that you know. All who know a jutsu, or unique style, please stand to my left. Those that do not, please stand to my right. Over 70% of the students went to Iruka's left, while the rest went to his right. Those who have honed to my right will follow Mizuki-sensei to the academy archives, where you will look through and find a jutsu or style you wish to work on. Your homework will be to learn the style or jutsu. You will be tested in 1 week. The students that followed Mizuki groaned, while Iruka turned to the rest of the class. As for the rest of you, I wish for each of you to display the jutsu that you know. You will be graded on efficiency. He turned to one of the civilians. You will start first. The student walked up to the center of the field and sighed. Time skip, an hour later. Everyone except for Shiryuki, Sesshomaru, Natsuki, and Naruto had shown their jutsu. Hinata had displayed use of her Byakugan, severely irking Naruto. Kiba had demonstrated his beast mimicry technique, Sasuke had used fireball, and the rest of the students merely used basic genjutsu or some healing jutsu. Iruka looked at Shiryuki. Shiryuki Ukami, please come forward and show us your jutsu. Shiryuki groaned. She walked up to the center field and began to charge Yuki through her body. Kuchios. Ukami needed. She reared her head back and let loose a loud howl much like a wolf's. No surprise there. The students stood in awe of what they were seeing. She sounded just like a wolf. Just when they thought it was over, they heard rustling in the bushes. They turned and saw a pack of wolves running out of the bushes. The students at first panicked until the wolves surrounded Shiryuki. She began to pet their fur. Iruka smirked. Well done. He wrote down something on his clipboard. Next up is Sesshomaru Inugami. Sesshomaru nodded his head and walked to the center field. He looked at a training dummy nearby. Dokutsum, his hand glowed with green energy before he ran at the dummy, slashing it across the body. Iruka was impressed, but his eyes widened at the reaction afterwards. The dummy began to hiss as the poison from his claws spread across the wood. Sesshomaru walked back towards the group of kids and stood stoically. Iruka got out of his shock and looked back at his clipboard. Up next, Natsuki Uzumaki Namikaze. Natsuki walked to the center arena and got into a fighting stance. She looked at Naruto. Watch me, Aniki. She then began to go through a set of katas, specifically made by the Uzumaki clan. Naruto watched the kata and snarled. He absolutely loathed that kata. No matter how many times he performed well on it, the instructors would always discipline him for a small mess up. She finished the technique in a crane stance with her left hand poised for a knife strike as she reached to where a katana would traditionally be. She looked back towards Naruto expecting to see clapping, but instead saw the ice-cold glare and the light snarled twitch of his lips. She looked down. I should have known. Why would he be happy for one of our family's techniques? She walked back to the group who was clapping. Iruka was also clapping. Bravo, Natsuki. Looks like we have quite a prodigy in our midst. He looked at his clipboard. And last but not least, Naruto Inugami. He looked up as Naruto reached into his pouch. He pulled out 2 daggers and walked up to the center of the ring. He squatted into a horse stance and began to inhale. The class looked at Naruto, but Natsuki was focusing on the daggers. They were the same daggers given to him by Nanashur, and Hiroshi. One dagger had a simple handle without a crossbar, but the hilt was beautifully engraved with white ornamental symbols. The blade was in the shape of a straight katana, and it had an ethereal beauty to it. Nanashur had given it to him after her mission in Kiri when they raided a clan home. It was a gift to her by a woman she had spared. The other dagger was an exotic-looking blade. The entire dagger was pure white, and on one side of the crossbar, there was an angelic-looking wing. There was a guard that covered the handle much like a cutlass would, and at the end of the hilt was a folded angelic wing. It was a gift from Hiroshi from his mission in Demon Country from the priestess there. It was thanks for assisting them in defeating the demon Morio. Iruka watched Naruto. Naruto, if you do not show me something, then I will. He was silenced when Naruto's eyes shot open, revealing glowing amber orbs. The daggers lit up with a beautiful glow. Naruto jumped and twisted in the air, sending wisps of the glow around him like a miasma. He landed on both feet and twisted his foot mid-landing, digging it into the ground, sending a cloud of dirt up in the air. He sliced the dust, making a clean cut through it like a hot knife through butter. Naruto backflipped in the air, the aura surrounding the blades extended and began to cut into the ground. Each flip created more cuts in the ground. Finally Naruto stopped on the last flip and twisted in mid-air, his arms outstretched with the blades pointed outwards. The blades cut into the ground as he slammed them in. Crack, a long crack appeared down from where Naruto started the long row of cuts, all the way to where it ended. The entire class was slack-jawed, and the teachers were babbling incoherently. Finally Iruka managed to find his voice. Amazing, I have never seen such an advanced skill before. He wrote down something. Alright, all of you head off to lunch. We will reconvene afterwards. The students headed back to the academy, except for Naruto, Sesshomaru, and Shiryuki. The 3 demons turned to Iruka as the rest of the students headed off to the main building for lunch. Iruka walked up to the 3 and smiled. I have to say I am impressed. You 3 are incredibly skilled. Those techniques are definitely beyond what any academy student could accomplish. The 3 smirked, but Naruto gave Iruka a calculating look. Iruka-sensei, no doubt you had far more reason to speak to us than just to congratulate us, so tell us, what do you want? Iruka nervously scratched the back of his head before he became serious. Due to the nature of those techniques, and the lack of knowledge regarding them, I am going to have to ask that you bring in any knowledge you have on them tomorrow. What? Shiryuki, Sesshomaru, and Naruto were releasing large amounts of killing intent as they glared at Iruka. I said that I want all information on those techniques. Since you 3 are not part of a registered clan, then you will have to turn in all jutsu you know into the Shinobi Corps for their usage. Naruto glared at Iruka. Well, you can take your rules and shove them up your ass. These are our techniques. We may not be an official family yet, but we are not going to hand over techniques that we have worked our asses off to create. Iruka grabbed Naruto by his shirt. Now listen here, you little brat. That is enough, Iruka. Iruka turned his head to see Mizuki standing there with his Aoi and Totosai. Iruka looked at Mizuki. What is it? Mizuki walked up to Iruka and handed him a scroll. Iruka opened it after he placed Naruto down. His eyes widened when he saw what was inside. It was an official declaration that the Inugami family, along with any of their vassals, were under clan protection laws. It was signed by the Yamanaka, Nara, Akimichi, Uchiha, Inuzuka, Aburame, Mitarashi Senju, and Uzumaki Namikaze clans. He lowered the scroll and turned to the three demons. I apologize for. Save it. The three headed back towards the academy. Izaioi walked up to Iruka. Now I understand that what I saw right now was just you asserting village rules. Her face contorted into an aggressive form as she grabbed Iruka by the shirt and hoisted him in the air. If I ever find out that you have laid your hands on my family again, I will personally end your miserable life. She dropped Iruka and walked towards the academy exit as Totosai followed them. Mizuki looked at Iruka with a disappointed expression. Iruka, you have got to learn to control your anger. Ever since your parents died, you have been an aggravation more than anything. And frankly, I am getting sick and tired of it. Mizuki walked off as he left Iruka to his thoughts. Meanwhile, Naruto, Shirayuki, and Sesshomaru were sitting under a tree eating their bento boxes. The three were about to open their food. Excuse me. The three looked up to see Hinata standing in front of them with her own bento box, nervously looking down. Could I maybe eat lunch with you? Naruto looked at Hinata, and then he looked at Sesshomaru and Shirayuki. The two nodded. Naruto sighed as he moved over. Sure, why not? Hinata nervously sat down and opened her bento. She pulled out a cinnamon bun and began to eat it. Naruto pulled out a few sticks of dango, Sesshomaru pulled out some fried fish, and Shirayuki pulled out a steak. The four ate for a bit until Naruto decided to talk, so Hinata said. Girl flinched. Why would someone of the prestigious Hyuga clan, second only in arrogance to the Uzumaki Namikaze family, want to eat with us? He looked at Hinata, who was now looking down at her food. Well, you see, I feel like I owe you. Naruto's eyes quirked when he heard that. When you rescued me from that Kumo ninja, I remembered your chakra signature, and I wanted to maybe be your friend. Naruto's eyes slightly widened before they narrowed. A bloodline user wants to be my friend. Hinata looked down as Naruto got up and began to walk away. Sesshomaru got up and walked over to Naruto and grabbed his shoulder. Naruto, not all bloodline users are bad. I understand your hatred for Kekkai Genkai. Really I do, but Hinata-san has done nothing wrong. At the very least try not to be so heartless to her, please. Naruto sighed. Sesshomaru was right as always. I know, it's just that he began to massage his temples as he walked back to the tree. He looked at Hinata. Hinata, I'm sorry, it's just that I have this issue with bloodlines. It's not you. It's just the bloodlines. I am sorry if I offended you in any way. Hinata smiled at Naruto. It's alright. The four sat back down and continued their lunch. When the bell rang for class, the three had sat together. Sasuke later joined them on the other side of the room. Natsuki was staring at Naruto. Aniki, how much have you changed? She looked down at her notes, a picture of her and her brother on the front. Later, school finished with everyone heading outside to greet their parents. Hinata sat around waiting for her mother for a while. Eventually she decided to just head home on her own. She was about to walk out the front gates. Hey Hinata, she turned around and saw Naruto walking towards her with Sasuke, Sesshomaru, and Shirayuki. Where you headed? Hinata looked down. My Kachan did not come to escort me home, so I have to get home on my own. It is frowned upon to be late for anything in our clan. She began to walk off, as Naruto snarled to himself. That bitch, she forgot to pick up her daughter, and the clan frowns upon being late to anything. They are seriously pushing for the title of most arrogant clan in Konoha, right? At this moment, he walked forward and stopped Hinata from walking. Then we will escort you home. You never know what kind of sickos live in this village. The other three nodded as they followed Naruto's lead. Hinata smiled as the group began to head towards the Hyuga compound. Outside of the village walls, a young woman with crimson red hair and a slender figure was running through the forests of Konoha. Trying to get to the village, she leaped over a log as a blast of dark energy tore into the ground. She tumbled as she landed face first into the ground. She looked up to reveal orange-slitted eyes. She quickly got up and ran to the village, cursing her luck. Of all the creatures I had to run into, it had to be a devil, and him of all devils, of course. The young woman saw the walls of Konoha. Yes, now she did not finish her statement, as she was blown forwards by a direct blast of demonic energy. She tumbled and flipped for a few moments before she landed head first into the ground, immediately becoming unconscious. The ground began to shake and crack as each footstep by whatever was chasing her became louder. Suddenly the trees parted, revealing a pair of glowing demon eyes. A long arm reached out and picked up the girl. The creature looked her over before it looked at Konoha and began its trek towards the demonic aura being held in the village. Naruto, Hinata, Shirayuki, and Sesshomaru were walking through the village square. They had taken a wrong turn and ended up getting lost. Hinata began to worry. If I am late, mother will be furious. She looked around to see if there was anything she recognized and found nothing. Naruto sighed. Why the hell did he not take time to remember the layout of the village? He sighed as he looked around. Okay, think Naruto, the Hyuga compound was a big white building, and it was about 10 blocks down from the Namikaze compound, so if I find the damn compound, Then from there I can find the Hyuga compound. Naruto was about to take a turn when he suddenly froze in mid-step. Shiryuki and Sesshomaru did the same. Hinata saw the three Yuki freeze and wondered what was wrong. Naruto began to sniff the air. Shiryuki took in deep sniffs while Sesshomaru closed his eyes. The three of them snapped their heads down a street as their eyes narrowed and slitted, and they suddenly took off. Hinata saw them jump on buildings and began to crawl on the surface on all fours as they continued to leap down the street. Hinata quickly activated her Byakugan and ran down the street. Naruto jumped over a building with Sesshomaru and Shiryuki following close behind. They jumped onto the streets, kicking up dust, and then quickly ran towards the forest, snarling as they ran in. Hinata ran out of an alleyway as she saw the three of them run into the forest, and her eyes widened in terror. That is where the forbidden training grounds are. Okami no. She ran into the forest praying she could somehow stop them before they got too close. Sesshomaru slashed through the trees with his claws and sent down a few large trees. Shiryuki padded past them, while Naruto expertly weaved in and out of the branches with incredible agility. They appeared in a field, covered in a thick fog and right in front of a newly dug hole. Naruto got on all fours and sniffed the edge of the hole. He snarled as he began to drip saliva from his canines. Hinata barreled through the trees as she saw the three crouch down like an animal ready to pounce. What is going on? The three suddenly jumped and immediately went downwards, and she ran right to where she saw the three and found a hole. She used her Byakugan, and was astounded at the sight. The edge of the hole permeated a dark aura that shone purplish black. She felt nervous. Something about this place put her on edge, and she did not like it not one bit. She looked down the hole. If the energy at the top of it was so foul, what could possibly be in the hole that could create such energy? She could not afford to think of that now, not when there were three people she cherished in danger. She inhaled deeply, it's now or never, and jumped into the hole. She hit a hard surface and began to slide downwards. She had to duck as an incoming branch came in. She tried to veer out of the way of a large branch and ended up scratching her face. She ducked as a tangle of roots nearly close-lined her, and she suddenly felt as if she was flying, and then she slammed into the ground. She tumbled for a bit, and finally slammed into something. She pushed herself up and looked at what she had hit, and was shocked beyond belief. She got up and looked around. She was astounded at what she was seeing. She thought it was just a myth, a story to tell young children. She was standing in the Rosuto Nijiro no Kinko, the place where the Shodaime locked the 9 Bijou up until he dispersed them amongst the elemental nations, keeping Kyuubi for himself until Madara Uchiha rebelled against them. She looked around, and was astonished by what she was seeing. There were 9 statues, all in a perfect circle. Each statue was completely made up of wood, and each statue was of one of the 9 Bijou, sitting atop a pedestal. Each statue stood as tall as a 3-story building, and each pedestal was large enough to support a 2-story door. Each door on the pedestals were locked, all except for the one that had the wooden statue of the Kyuubi, and it was that door that had the trace chakra of her 3 classmates. She quickly ran to the door and looked inside. There was a long hallway that was completely made up of wood, but this was no ordinary wood. Each seemed to draw in the energy around it, almost like it was absorbing the energy around it. She ran down the hallway as she kept her Byakugan up, but as she went down the hallway she felt her Byakugan begin to deactivate. She also felt her chakra leaving her body. She finally decided to turn off the Byakugan, as it was useless at the moment. All she had to do was get to the end of the hallway and she stopped as she heard a dark roar, one that sent chills down her spine. She ran down the hallway and exited the tunnel to see a sight that sent chills down her spine. In the room was a massive humanoid creature. It was some sort of monster, and Naruto, Shiryuki, and Sesshomaru were attacking the beast, but their attacks were more feral. She was about to run, but she stopped as she saw a woman with red hair being bound by roots, which seemed to be leeching stuff off of her, and it had to hurt. Hinata ran to the woman but stopped when a hand slammed in front of her. She looked up to see that whatever it was that was fighting her classmates was smiling down at her in a sick and twisted way. I am sorry, but I cannot allow you to stop me from acquiring my prize. He raised his hand up and was about to smash it down on her, Kaze no Kizu, but was stopped when he was hit in the side by slashes of energy. The creature tumbled over in pain as Sesshomaru ran over to Hinata. Hinata, are you okay? Hinata nodded her head as the 3 young Yuki looked at the monster. What do you think you are doing here? The creature got up and snarled at them. Isn't it obvious? I am finishing what your beloved Shodaime started, absorbing the power of the Bijou. He pushed himself up and pointed to the place around her. This place was created by the Shodaime over 100 years ago. He made it with his ability to command demonic chakra. His goal was to absorb the 9 Bijou and ascend to a power that would make him a god on earth, but alas, he was not able to absorb their power. Later on, his brother, the Nidaime, dispersed the Bijou, but he did not count on me discovering this place. He stood up and yelled, with the power held in this place, I will take my rightful place as the new demon lord. He began to laugh maniacally. You are a fool, Beelzebub. Everyone turned to see the young girl was struggling against her bonds. You are just a devil with an inflated ego. No amount of power will change that. The now named Beelzebub chuckled as he traced the ground around her with his massive finger. Is that so, Beneheim, or should I call you Kyuubi? Everyone gasped in shock when they heard what Beelzebub said. This girl was the Kyuubi. I was lucky to find you so weak, and you really should not pick fights so easily, especially against a human with powers equaling a Bijou's, but then again you did want Madara dead, and that red-haired brat was in your way. Beelzebub smirked until Naruto shouted out, like hell, we are going to let you get that strong. I will not allow it. Naruto reached for Tessega and released it, Sesshomaru pulled out his katana, and Shirayuki readied her gauntlets. Beelzebub looked at Naruto in boredom. Oh please, you would not even be able to scratch. She was silenced when Naruto swung his sword and released an even bigger wave of energy. Once it connected, Beelzebub fell over. Screaming in pain, Sesshomaru jumped on the devil's chest and slashed him up his chest until he reached his throat, where he had to jump off as Beelzebub tried to attack him. Shirayuki jumped on Beelzebub's hand and used her poison claw and slashed it. Beelzebub roared in anger as he pushed himself up. How could I have been scratched by weaklings like you? Beelzebub ran at them and sent a strike at them, sending rocks and debris everywhere. Hinata pulled Beneheim away from the roots. Ano, are you alright? Beneheim looked at Hinata and cringed. That damn devil he took away 6 tails from me. She looked up as the roots continued to draw the energy in a sphere at the top. If he absorbs that power, no one will be able to stop him. Beneheim keeled over in pain. Naruto pulled out Tesseiga and swung downwards, Kaze no Kizu. The wind scar tore through the air, heading directly towards Beelzebub, but all it hit was a brick wall. Suddenly Naruto was lifted up into the air and brought to face the devil. You are tough. I will give you that, but no one shall ever be able to defeat Aagh. Beelzebub let go immediately and threw Naruto into the air as Naruto slashed open his finger. Awesome, take this. Naruto raised his sword up. Kaze no crash. Time seemed to freeze as Naruto's sword impaled the giant jewel that was beating with red energy. Suddenly the jewel shattered, and all the energy flowed directly into the Tesseiga and right into Naruto. Aagh. As Naruto screamed, the ground above him began to crack, not being able to take the pressure of the demonic energy. Up top, Minato Namikaze had felt the demonic aura's release. He knew it was Kyuubi's. Kyuubi, it's back? He left the office and set off the alarm while shouting into the loudspeaker. All of the Uzumaki Namikaze clan, all report at the front of the gates, and await my orders. He ran around the office, grabbed his kunai, a copy of the Shiki Fuin, and a few Hiraishin kunai. A minute later he had gathered everything and looked ready for war. He jumped out the window to see all of his cal awaiting him. Let's go catch us a demon. He jumped into the village with the rest of the clan following, or most of it. Hiroshi, Nanashir, and Natsuki all stayed behind. Natsuki because she was too young for this, and Nanashir and Hiroshi because they had no intention of remaining in the village. Hiroshi, this is risky. Do you really think this is the best way to leave? Hiroshi looked at his lover and stroked her face. Yes, since they are going to be preoccupied with that demonic aura, we can escape. He turned to Natsuki. Natsuki, take care of your brother. Natsuki hugged Hiroshi's leg. I am going to miss you, Hiroshi Nisan, and you too, Nanashir Nachan. Nanashir hugged Natsuki. I am going to miss you too. She looked at Natsuki in the eyes. Do not let Minato control you, Natsuki. Do what you feel is right. Promise us. Natsuki nodded her head. I promise. The three gently separated as Hiroshi placed his hand on Nanashi's shoulder. Come on, they won't wait forever. The two Jonin rank shinobi, the only ones in the Leaf Village that could fight off every last Jonin and still have enough energy to run, were gone missing. Nin? Natsuki looked at the place they were standing and found a box. She picked it up and looked at what was written on it. Do not open until you are a genin. She looked around to make sure nobody was around and ran into the mansion, intent on hiding the box from her father. With the rest of the clan, Minato and Kushina were towards the forbidden training ground. It was considered forbidden because no one has ever entered that training ground alone and come out alive. Kushina suddenly snapped her head as she saw Tsunade and Jiraiya jump through the trees. Jiraiya, Tsunade, you felt it too? The two Sannin nodded their heads as Kushina smirked. Excellent, this battle will be over soon enough. Over the years Kushina has become arrogant, thinking their clan is invincible. Minato smirked. Seeing the training field, he stopped and landed on top of the field. Everybody, battle formations. The clan members got into position as they stood there, a mistake that they would forever regret. Back with Naruto. Raggh. Naruto continued to roar in pain as the Kyuubi's chakra shot itself into his body. Sesshomaru and Shirayuki stared wide-eyed at the spectacle as energy flowed around him so much that it was beginning to crack the ground above him. Sesshomaru could clearly see the green Yuki inherited from his father, but he also saw a blue chakra that seemed to move about in an unpredictable way so as to avoid striking the rest of the chakra. The last chakra was, in a word, chaotic. It was violently attacking everything around it as the three chakra pushed themselves into the demon air. Naruto gritted his teeth in pain as his claws lengthened and screamed, Raggh. A shockwave of energy tore through the cavern, hitting the devil with enough force to send him down and tearing through the ground above him. Up top, the Uzumaki Namikaze clan suddenly felt the ground shake. Minato grinned in arrogance. Looks like Kyuubi came to fight, get ready. The clan arrogantly arranged themselves into their stances, not even worried for a second. Minato grinned as the rumbles increased and was thrown back as the demonic aura tore through the ground and smashed into every person standing in the training ground, which included the Uzumaki Namikaze clan, the last Kazama, and the last Senju. They fell over themselves and each other, then pushed themselves up. Damn, that hurt. They fell down into unconsciousness, unaware of the effect the chakra would have on their bodies. In the cavern, Beelzebub pushed himself up and snarled, Damn, curse you, Inugami. Beelzebub pushed himself up and headed out of the room, too injured from the blast to fight. Naruto was unconsciously gripping his sword like a vice as he dangled from the ceiling unconscious. Hinata pushed herself up with surprising ease. She flexed her hands and felt them move around easier. Weird, why do I feel so much more? She stopped her mental question as she heard a groan of pain. She quickly turned to find Beneheim pushing herself up. Kyuubi. She ran over and helped her up to her feet. Damn, I lost 6 tails, she coughed a bit as she clutched her side. Hinata looked Kyubi over. She looked to be the same age she was, and apparently she lost a few years of age at least in form. Are you alright, Benihime? Benihime coughed as she spoke. Besides losing a few tails of power, I guess I am okay. She managed to push herself up and wobbled a bit. Crack. The two looked to see that Tessega was slowly coming out of the massive jewel. Hinata saw this and ran to make sure he did not fall, but screamed when she saw Naruto, and the Tessega begin to fall. Naruto fell directly towards the ground. Hinata thought he was going to hit, but was surprised when Sesshomaru appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Naruto in mid-flight. The two Yuki landed with Sesshomaru cringing. Looks like you need your rest, Naruto. Sesshomaru fell over as Hinata ran towards them. Totosai, Kyubi, and Myoga in tow. 3 days later, Izayoi walked towards the family infirmary where Naruto, Hinata, Kyubi, Sesshomaru, and Shirayuki were laying. It seemed that the Hyuga family was away on business and could not bring Hinata. It was for the best. It kept Hinata away from her ignorant family. She was carrying around a 1.5-year-old inuyasha hoe she was carrying in a baby bag. She opened the door to the infirmary to find the 4 demons and 1 human waking up. Naruto was stretching his limbs and trying to stand without wobbling. Naruto, you need your rest. You still have not fully healed. Naruto looked at Izayoi. Yes, Izayoi-sama. He crawled back in his bed and tried to get comfortable. Shirayuki yawned and patted her feet as she got up. Man, that hurts, and why do I smell fox? She looked around and sniffed the air. Benihime grew a tick mark in her forehead. That's because I am a fox, Yuki, you damn wolf. The two glared at each other. Girls, the two looked at Sesshomaru, who was now getting up. Would you two please do me a favor and stop your damn arguing? The two demonists huffed and turned away. Ano, thank you for your hospitality, but I need to get back home soon. She began to get out of bed before a hammer was gently placed over her. I don't think so, young missy. Everyone turned to see Totosai sitting in his chair with his hammer preventing Hinata from moving, and having Myoga on his shoulder. We still have no idea what damage you may have sustained from a shockwave of pure Yuki, and the rest of your family is away on business. Hinata looked down at the last part as a single tear fell from her eye. They left me again. She clutched her sheets as she allowed her lip to quiver in anger and sadness, but she stopped when she remembered something. What damage could I have received? Totosai removed the hammer from over her and sighed. Well, since it's several different Yukis were present, we have no idea. But you may develop much better sense thanks to the canine qualities of it. Beyond that, we will have to perform a spell on you to find out. He got up and walked away to the library to find the book. In the meantime, Myoga jumped on her bed. You 5 will have to remain here until you are all back to full health. He jumped onto Izayoi's shoulder and sat down as a sage would. I will go make you all something to eat. Does anyone like cinnamon buns? Bad question. Cinnamon buns? Hinata looked up with stars in her eyes as she began to unconsciously bounce up and down with a big grin on her face. Everyone else slowly edged away from her, not used to her sudden attitude. Totosai sighed. Kids, why did you all go running towards the demonic aura? What compelled you all to do such a stupid thing? The 3 canine demons looked down, thoughtful expressions on their faces. I don't know, I felt the demonic aura and then everything went blank. I remember defending Hinata from that Beelzebub guy, but nothing before that. Totosai stroked his chin. So, you 3 are going through that stage, huh? Oh boy, he began to massage his temples. This is going to be great. Any demonic aura will send the 3 of you into an instinct-induced trance, especially since you 3 are heading through your first demonic stages. The 3 looked at Totosai in confusion. Totosai looked at Sesshomaru. What are demonic stages? Totosai opened his mouth to answer until a frying pan collided with his head. He will tell you when you're older. She came out carrying a pan of cinnamon buns. Okay, I brought the cinnamon buns. Now we can. She was silenced by an EP as Hinata jumped from her bed and attacked the cinnamon buns with fervor. Not even 10 seconds passed before Hinata was grinning on the floor with cinnamon bun caked on her face. Everyone looked in shock at Hinata, that is until Totosai slapped his forehead. Oh boy, looks like the Yuki did affect her. Everyone turned to Totosai. When demons go through their stages, they tend to get obsessive over certain foods, which means he turned to Izayoi-sama. I would suggest to hiding the fish, steak, ramen, and anything else the kids favor until their stages have completed. Izayoi nodded her head and ran to the kitchen while Hinata blinked a few times and looked at her sticky hands. She turned to everyone and asked, why are my hands sticky? Everyone's sweat dropped as Totosai sighed. This is going to take a while. Uzumaki Namake's compound. The hired nurses were running around, carrying stacks upon stacks of papers, none of them believing what they were seeing from the diagnostics on the clan members, all except for Nanashiro and Hiroshi, who had not been seen in days. The head doctor, apprentice of Tsunade, looked at the charts in shock and morbid terror. It's not possible. How is this possible? Shizen threw the documents to the ground. I want all nurses to run a full diagnostic on every last clan member now. The nurses got to work, all of them writing down the results from the medical jutsu. The nurses sighed as they walked up to Shizen. Shizen-sama, I am sorry, but the results from the last 5 conclusive tests have all shown that. She stopped as Shizen smashed her hand into the desk. Damn it! She sat down and sighed. Alright, you are free to go. The nurses bowed and headed out. Shizen looked up at the ceiling and sighed. How am I going to tell them the data? She sighed again as she walked up to her mistress. Well, at least your clan will not die out. She stroked her mistress' hair and left. Meanwhile, border of Tsuchi no Kuni, Nanashiro and Hiroshi jumped into a clearing, Covered in scratches and bruises, they had to fight an invasion force from IWA that would have taken the village completely by surprise. They sighed as they took a minute to catch their breath. Alright, we made it, and just in time. The two sat down and tried to slow their breathing. So you came. The two shot up as they heard the voice from the shadows. Are you the contact? If so, show us your proof. A scroll rolled out from the shadows. Nanisher picked it up and looked at it. Everything checked out. Alright, we have the answer. There was a long silence. We accept. There was chuckling coming from the shadows as a man with a Venus flytrap body and two skin colors came out of the shadows wearing a black cloak with red clouds. The man smirked on both sides of his face as he pulled out a box covered in ancient symbols. He opened the box to reveal two rings. One had the kanji for void, the other had the kanji for scarlet. Welcome to the Akatsuki Hiroshi Uzumaki and Nanisher Namikaze. The man walked forward and presented them the rings. Nanisher took the one that had the kanji for void and placed it on her left pinky. Hiroshi took the one that had the kanji for scarlet and placed it on his right ring finger. Izayoi came out of the kitchen and panted out, "Okay, all the ramen, steak, fish, cinnamon buns, chicken, and just about everything else that those three like are now hidden. Now for dinner tonight we will be having rice with a side of teriyaki dumplings." Totosai sighed in content as he leaned back in his chair. Good, now we just have to make it through the next 2 weeks of them going nuts if anyone releases a demonic aura. Totosai rubbed the back of his head and groaned. How did a devil of all things make it into the village? Not only that, but it was carrying Kyubi, and no doubt a small amount of Yuki could have been felt even by Genin. Totosai sighed. It seems Konoha has gotten quite frail in its days. They turned back towards the 4 canine Yuki and the one human infected with demonic Yuki, wondering what would happen in the near future. Next day, Uzumaki Namikaze compound. The entirety of the Uzumaki Namikaze compound awoke the next day. They were given the results of what happened to their bodies and not one of them liked it. What? Minato tore off his covers and yelled at Shizen. What do you mean that the Yuki permanently damaged our bodies? Shizen quivered at the killing intent and spoke up. Minato-sama, due to the influx of several types of Yuki, one that we recognize as being that of Kyubi's, and the other being of a similar nature, the Yukis have made every last person in your clan touched by the Yuki sterile. On top of that, it seems that the effectiveness of your bloodlines has been dramatically reduced. You would not be able to decode even a simple explosive seal with your Saishigan's level. And Kushina-sama, she turned her attention to the fuming redhead. You will have to train just as hard as anyone else to get results, and some of you will have to train even harder than that. From what I can see, only 3 people in the clan are now capable of reproduction and use of your bloodlines: Nanisher Namikaze, Hiroshi Uzumaki, and Natsuki Uzumaki Namikaze, but we cannot find Nanisher or Hiroshi anywhere, and all of their shinobi gear is gone. Minato snarled as he gripped the side of his bed. Those two, damn, they have taken our clan's bloodline. Minato knew how much the two of them hated him, and how often they discussed his decision with Naruto to be a mistake. He sighed as he began to massage the bag of his neck. Perfect, now the only one left in the clan who can continue our legacy is Natsuki, and she will not be able to breed for at least another 8 years. He clasped his head in his own hands. Damn, our prestige will plummet dramatically unless we find some way to bring our clan face. We will turn to ruin like the Karamas. Minato was about to try and think of a plan. Minato-sama. They all turned to see a shinobi run in. Minato-sama. Spies have indicated that a young woman has been admitted into the Inugami home. The spy says that the lady is Zao. I said the girl was Kyubi. Minato looked at the ninja and grinned. Looks like I don't need to think of a plan. He turned towards his clan members. Attention, we are heading to the Uzumaki Namikaze compound. Be ready in 10 minutes. The clan members scattered as they readied their battle equipment. 20 minutes later, Izayoi was standing outside the Inugami compound, staring down Minato. I have said it 3 times already, and I will say it again. Beneheim will not be given over to you. She is innocent of her crimes to this village as she was being manipulated. I am not aware of the full details at the moment, but she is currently in recovery, so I can't get all the details. One of the arrogant Namikaze clan members walked up. Oh please, why should we believe some little wench from outside our illustrious village, and besides, you should be honored to hand over such a power to our clan. The Namikaze grinned as Izayoi looked at him. Why the hell would I be honored to present a power to a clan whose arrogance knows no bounds? Beneheim will remain here under the alliance of the canine Yuki signed by my late husband and the other heads of the canine families. Minato and the others were shocked by this. Kushina was the one to voice their shock. What clan alliance? You told us you were allied with the wolf tribe, but you said nothing about the fox tribe. Izayoi walked to Kushina and began to stare her down. Does every clan in Konoha tell their secrets to possible enemies? If so, then I am surprised that Konoha has lasted as long as it has. Izayoi stepped back and looked at the entire group. My late husband signed an agreement between the dog, wolf, fox, and jackal tribes. The alliance states that if any member of the clan is in jeopardy, a member of the other clans are obligated to help and assist them, and from what I remember is that the other clans cannot interfere in clan affairs. She gave the group a smug look as they cursed to themselves. Minato was about to yell at Izayoi, Lady Izayoi. They turned to see Totosai walk out of the building. Beneheim has awoken and she is ready to tell us what happened when she attacked 8 years ago. Izayoi nodded her head. She went to walk towards the house when Minato and Kushina pushed by her. They went to move Totosai out of the way, but they were shocked when he simply grabbed their arms and prevented them from moving any further. Minato snarled, as your Hokage I demand you let us by. Totosai tightened the grip on his arm, making him wince. This is not your home. You have no say in clan matters, and your position as Hokage will not change that. Totosai let go of their limbs. Kushina spoke up. The Kyuubi, Benihime. Izayoi shouted at Kushina. Grrn fine Benihime, attacked our village 8 years ago. As such we have a right to know exactly why she attacked. Izayoi was about to snap at Kushina. Very well, but the group turned to see Totosai was the one to speak. If you cause any amount of ruckus in our home we will not hesitate to finish you off, understand? Minato and Kushina grumbled to themselves as they nodded. They were about to head inside. Lady Izayoi. The group turned to see Myoga jump on Izayoi's shoulder. Lady Izayoi, something is wrong with Master Naruto. Izayoi's eyes widened as she ran into the house. The Uzumaki Namake's clan however were sputtering at the fact that a flea was talking. Minato was wide-eyed and open-mouthed as Kushina was sputtering out random nonsense. They went inside the house as they suddenly felt an odd demonic aura. It was similar to Kyuubi's, but it had another aura mixed with it. Not wanting to risk such a powerful aura being useless they ran inside, hoping to take it for themselves. Inside the infirmary Naruto was thrashing about as red Yuki mixed with a golden Yuki. The two Yukis were thrashing against each other, making Naruto's body convulse and spasm. Benihime tried to get up, but she was still weak from the power absorption by Beelzebub. Sesshomaru and Shirayuki were not even able to get close. Their bodies could not handle the hybrid Yuki. Hinata was able to get up. She tried to get closer to Naruto, but the Yuki kept burning her. She got angry as she saw the Yuki hurting him. Damn, I can't let my friend be hurt. She snarled as she pushed forwards. The Yuki went directly towards her, but it somehow deflected off her. Sesshomaru and Shirayuki were astonished as they saw her push her way through the Yuki. How is this possible? She should have been burned to death by the demonic aura. How? Benihime was just as shocked. Her Yuki was far more potent than any other known demon. Hinata should have been turned into ash by now. Hinata clasped onto Naruto's arm and clung on as the Yuki began to swirl back into his body. It was at that moment that Izayoi, Totosai, Myoga, Kushina, and Minato came into the infirmary. Everyone watched as changes took place in Naruto's body as well as Hinata. Naruto's eyes became a mixture of crimson and gold, making a bright orange color. His hair turned completely white as crimson-orange hair began to take form. The large bang over his eye got a black tip, as did the hair that flowed down his back. His nails turned darker in color, and his gums noticeably darkened. Hinata's eyes became slightly redder, and her nails lengthened partially. Her hair became a bit lighter, and her muscles convulsed a bit. Suddenly all the Yuki shot into Naruto's body, eliciting a massive scream of pain. Hinata fell over and clutched her still convulsing muscles. Izayoi quickly grabbed Hinata and placed her on her bed as Totosai and Myoga checked over Naruto. Minato saw the result of the Yuki mixture and pondered to himself, this might work to my advantage. I just have to figure out a way to make this work. He turned towards Izayoi. So which one is Kyuubi? Izayoi snapped her head towards him and snapped. Can't you see that these two are in serious pain? They just had an uncontrolled Yuki transfusion, and the effects are not yet known. At the very least try to show compassion to these two. She went back to healing their injuries from the Yuki transfusion. Minato grunted in annoyance as he and Kushina sat down on the side, waiting for the information they wanted. Benihime, however, was readying her claws just in case. 2 hours later, Minato, Kushina, Izayoi, Totosai, Myoga, Benihime, Sesshomaru, Shirayuki, Naruto, and Hinata, who was holding inuyasha, were sitting around the table in the dining room. Minato had just been told about why Kyuubi attacked. He was stroking his chin and thought, so Madara Uchiha was the one who made Kyuubi attack. He mentally smirked. Finally, the two former Kage-level shinobi got up. Thank you for informing us of this. We will leave now. They went towards the door and met with their clan. All the while Minato was grinning at the prospect of this new information. He turned towards his brother Erasure. Erasure, have all our clan ready, and make sure Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Kakashi are ready as well. We initiate Plan 6. Erasure grinned as he nodded his head. Minato and Kushina went to the Hokage Tower to prepare the legal orders. Soon they would be the strongest clan in Konoha. That night, Sasuke Uchiha was walking out of his bedroom. He needed to go to the bathroom since he had a large drink of tomato juice. He was about to head for the bathroom. Hey, what are you doing here? You aren't AGG. Sasuke stopped when he heard someone scream. His eyes widened as he heard the next statement. Kill every last Uchiha. Kill the traitorous clan. He heard a roar of approval as swords and kunai were drawn. He heard the screams of pain as men and women were slashed to bits. Itachi swung at the person in front of him. The person was wearing a black cloak so he could not see their face. He kicked them in the stomach and was about to finish him off. Die Uchiha scum! He swung his sword back and blocked a strike coming from a woman. This time he saw the characteristics of the person: blonde hair, blue eyes, and Namikaze. Shursui rammed his sword into the heart of a male Uzumaki, and then threw a kunai into the heads of 3 Namikaze. Fugaku and Mikoto were attacking the incoming members of the Uzumaki Namikaze clan. Fugaku went through hand seals and yelled out, Katan, Karya Enden. A dragon of fire slammed into 5 of them, killing them. The other 4 circled around. Mikoto ran through hand seals. Right on. Rai no Ryushi punched forwards and a dragon of lightning slammed into the other 4, killing them instantly. The rest of the Uchiha clan was attacking the incoming assailants, but they were outnumbed 3-1. Itachi kicked back a member of the Namikaze branch, Dai Namikaze. He ran forward and pulled out his katana. Shursui was about to throw a kick at an Uzumaki's head. The Uchiha saw the distress the Uzumaki was in and saw an opportunity, Kawarimi. Itachi was only a foot away from the Namikaze. Suddenly he was engulfed in a poof of smoke. He quirked an eyebrow but continued forward. The sound of metal-piercing flesh was heard. Itachi waited for the smoke to clear and his eyes widened in horror, for it wasn't the Namikaze he had impaled, it was his best friend Shisui Uchiha. No! He grabbed Shisui, who was bleeding from the mouth. No. Shisui, don't die on me. Shisui reached up towards Itachi's face before his body went limp in Itachi's arms. Itachi yelled as he smothered his face in his best friend's chest. Shisui! He sobbed into Shisui's chest as the Namikaze and a few of the other assailants surrounded him, smirking. Ah, sis, the big bad Uchiha lose his best friend, oh what a pity. He smirked a malicious smile. A pity I couldn't have been the one to kill him, ha 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 ha. The other assailants laughed along with him, while Itachi slowly stood up. Itachi slowly began to reveal his eyes. The ones who were laughing turned towards Itachi and got ready to finish him off. He completely showed his eyes, revealing they had turned into a 3-point raptor shuriken. You bastards. His left eye began to bleed as he screamed in anger and anguish. The Uzumaki Namikaze members had no chance to defend themselves. Black flames erupted from his eye and engulfed them. Itachi yelled as he turned his attention towards the other assailants. The assailants immediately caught on fire. Fugaku, Mikoto, and the remaining members of the Uchiha clan ducked out of the way of the black flames. Itachi yelled to the heavens as the black flames shot into the sky like a demonic pillar. Suddenly a golden flash erupted from behind him and a tri-pronged kunai was buried into his back. He fell over and clutched his eye as the black flames died down. Standing behind him was Minato Namikaze, with Kushina Uzumaki at his side. Uchihas, you have all been charged with treason. Fugaku glared at Minato and snapped at him. Treason, you wiped out almost our entire clan without provocation. Your clan forced the Kyuubi to attack 8 years ago. Your clan will lose its status, and all of Konoha will view you all as traitors. Minato smirked. Have a nice day, traitors. He disappeared in a golden flash. Off to the side, Sasuke had been frozen with fear. The blood and slaughter was just too much for his 8-year-old mind. Mikoto ran to Itachi's wounded body and scooped him up. My Sochi, please stay with us. She ran towards the infirmary with the last living Uchiha medics. Sasuke looked around. There were the dead bodies of Uchiha, Uzumaki, and Namikaze. He had never seen so much death. He fell to the floor and wept at the loss of his clansmen, and the fact that he could do nothing to save them. Sasuke's eyes became cold. I swear, Minato Namikaze, I will have my revenge on you for this. 3 days later, Hinata had gone back to the Hyuga compound. She had been shoved into a rigorous training program once the clan discovered that she had been altered by demonic aura. They hoped she would eventually become even stronger than her cousin Niji, who has surpassed all Hyuga records. Hinata was lying in her bed, trying to get past the more severe injuries. She had to fight 3 branch members a year or 2 older than her, and she was not allowed to use anything by Juken. Her father sat by her bed and sighed. Don't worry, Hinata, you will be all the stronger for it. When the training program is finished, you will be the unanimous leader of our clan. Hinata huffed and turned on her side, facing away from Hayashi. What makes you think I want to lead this clan? Hayashi sighed at his daughter's attitude. She absolutely hated the idea of leading the Hyuga clan. In truth, she just wanted to be free of it, and be as far away from her mother as possible. Ever since the Kyuubi attack, his wife has grown much more powerful, so much so that she has even made him submit to her will. She now was head of the Hyuga clan while he was merely a proxy leader. The elders had no problem with it, especially since she came to power in the clan. She has made the Hyuga clan far stronger than it used to be. Hinata, try to understand, our clan is falling from its original grace during these times. In the last year our prestige has dropped considerably amongst the populace, so much so that few people even consider our clan's worth anymore. Nowadays the Uzumaki Namikaze clan has been gaining more influence. Hinata looked at her father and got up. I know, father, but she can at the very least try to be a mother. Sigh, I have to get to class by 2 san. She kissed her father's cheek, bringing a smile to his face. Hinata ran out of the Hyuga compound with such speed that nobody could hope to stop her. Hayashi sighed. When he first married his wife she was a happy person and he was the cold bastard, but now 10 years after they promised themselves to each other, the roles have switched. Academy. Natsuki Uzumaki Namikaze walked into the classroom. She had been receiving odd looks from the clan members, as well as looks of appraisal coming from the civilians. She did not have any knowledge of what had transpired 3 days ago. She entered the classroom and saw Sasuke Uchiha sitting by the window, a scowl of anger on his face. She walked over to see what was wrong. Hey Sasuke, you okay? She did not expect Sasuke to suddenly turn around and get into a fighting stance. She also was not expecting to see the large gash down his face. Get back, monster! Natsuki was shocked. Monster? Sasuke, what are you talking about? She was cut off when Sasuke shouted at her. Oh, don't you play dumb. Do you think that I would have forgotten how your clan butchered mine? Natsuki's eyes widened. Her clan killed his own. Sasuke, I had no idea. I had no knowledge that your clan. She would have continued had Sasuke not been kicked down by an upperclassman. How dare you, traitor! How dare you even speak to the daughter of the Yondaime? The older boy kicked Sasuke in the stomach, forcing him to take in deep breaths. Natsuki pushed the boy away. Hey, leave him alone. What did he ever do to you? The boy smiled sweetly at her and spoke. Natsuki, his clan is filled with traitors. It was them who forced the Kyuubi to attack our village. We are just setting an example. He reared his foot back to deliver another kick. That's enough, bastard. The kid turned around and saw Naruto. Naruto had kept the same outfit, but his hair was now white and crimson, his nails were long and black, sharpened to a point, and he had a considerable gain in height, probably 2 or 3 inches. Sesshomaru was noticeably favoring his right arm. Shiroyuki was limping slightly. There was a crimson-haired girl behind them. She seemed to display an aura of power that outclassed most jonin, and her eyes were a stunning crimson. The boy snarled, "And if I don't?" The boy suddenly found himself being held in the air by the clawed hand of Naruto. "Then I will beat you within an inch of your life. Any questions?" The boy quickly shook his head before Naruto threw him into the desks. Naruto walked over to Sasuke and noticed the gash. "What happened?" Sasuke grunted as he pushed himself up. "I got jumped to genin and 2 civilians, one got a lucky hit and damn it." Sasuke keeled over in pain. Shiroyuki ran a diagnostic jutsu over him and sighed. "Well, he will be fine, but I would suggest that you don't train for the next few days." Sasuke grunted in annoyance, but reluctantly agreed. Natsuki walked over to them but was stopped by Sesshomaru. "Natsuki, Sasuke at the moment hates your clan. I doubt that you being near him would be the best of ideas." Natsuki nodded her head and sat in her seat. The class went by rather slowly, with Iruka giving lectures on bloodlines. Today he was going over the Inuzuka blood limit of Inohata, dog body. "Alright, would someone be willing to give us a summary of the Inohata?" Kiba was the first to raise his hand. "Yes, Kiba, please tell us about the Inohata." Kiba smirked and stood. "The Inohata is the Kekei Genkai of the Inuzuka clan. It allows us to speak with all canines and gives us enhanced senses." The class looked at Kiba in awe except for Naruto, who scoffed. Kiba snapped at Naruto. "Hey, what do you know about MY clan's Kekei Genkai?" Naruto snarled at Kiba. "A hell of a lot more than you do, I assure." Naruto would have left it at that. "Really, Naruto?" Naruto turned his head to Iruka. "Then why don't you tell us?" Naruto sighed in annoyance and stood. "The Inohata is a body-based bloodline. Contrary to Kiba's belief, it does not give one the ability to talk to any canine. Cause there has not been an Inuzuka in history that has been able to speak to a fox, a wolf, or a jackal. The Inohata allows one to speak with specially bred dogs. The senses that are increased are only smell and hearing. The other senses, however, are dulled. The Inohata makes one colorblind, reduces one's sense of touch, and their taste sensors are basically useless beyond that. The Inuzuka clan is in fact a pathetic mockery of my own clan." Naruto smirked as the rest of the class began to snicker at Kiba's misfortune. "You bastard, you think you're tough shit? Well, how about you and I fight and see who is the real top dog?" Naruto smirked at Kiba and showed his abnormally large fangs, with pleasure mongrel. He got up and headed towards the exit and towards the arena. Beneheim, Shiroyuki, Sesshomaru, and Hinata followed close behind him. 10 minutes later the entire class was outside. Kiba was at the ready. He had not yet received a dog partner, so he was on his own fighting Naruto, a disadvantage in the Inuzuka style of fighting. Mizuki stood between the two, the match between Naruto Inugami and Kiba Inuzuka Hajime. Kiba ran at Naruto and swung his fist at Naruto's face. Naruto merely lifted his hand and captured his foot with his bare hand. He then kicked Kiba in the upper thigh, making the mutt squeal and whimper before Naruto used his demonic upper body strength and lifted Kiba off the ground, slamming him face first into the dirt. The total fight lasted 5 seconds. In the trees, Orochimaru smiled as he watched his favorite. Well, technically Naruto was no longer his godchild, but he still viewed him as such. Sitting next to him was his first daughter Anko Mitarashi, and on his side was his second wife Myra Mitarashi. After his first wife died, he went into a depression. His wife's sister, his sister-in-law, comforted him. Eventually the two married and his second child Ami was born. To a technical point the two of them were half-siblings, but in their DNA they were full-blood siblings since their mothers were twins. Myra looked at Orochimaru. "Oro-kun, are you planning on becoming his jonin instructor?" Orochimaru sighed as he let out a depressed sigh. "I wish I could, but because of my past affiliation with him, the Yondaime will never allow me to take him on as my student." The 3 Mitarashis watched as Naruto and the other 4 walked inside. Back to Naruto. Naruto sat at his desk with Shiroyuki sitting on his right, and Hinata sitting very close to his left. Totosai had warned him that Hinata may act out her hidden emotions more often during her cycles, but he wondered what he meant by that. Shiroyuki was inwardly snarling at the Hyuga. She had a crush on Naruto since he saved her life years ago, and by the looks of it so did Hinata, albeit hers was more suppressed due to her shy nature. She knew Naruto would have to take multiple females to bring about their new clan, but she would be damned if she wasn't his alpha female. Meanwhile Beneheim was looking over Naruto, admiring his features. He had a strong aura, an honorable path, and a good personality. The ancient Bijou wondered if he was worthy of her. It was in her nature to wonder the SE things. Her new body, however, was not exactly suitable for her adult desires, but she had every intention of finding her mate, and she seemed to have found someone close to worthy of that honor. Sesshomaru was frowning to himself. Naruto was getting all the girls that were decent, while he was stuck with crazy Inuzuka fangirls. Perfect. When class finally ended, Sesshomaru decided to practice his Bakken in one of the nearby training fields. He arrived there, and was shocked to find it littered with hundreds of shuriken, kunai, Kuzurigamas held just about every possible type of throwing weapon. He was about to continue into the field when he heard crying. He turned to the source to find a girl around his age, maybe a year older, slamming her fists into the tree. He walked over calmly, but his nose twitched when he suddenly smelt a coppery smell blood. He noticed that her knuckles were bleeding pretty badly. Rushing over, he grabbed her arm before it could slam into the tree again. What are you doing? You're bleeding, you need to take a break. The girl looked up at him, and he found himself amazed by her beauty even for one so young. She had 2 buns in her hair that resembled the ears of a type of bear in the East. It was a panda, he believed. Her eyes were a beautiful chocolate brown, and her physique was that of a warrior. She fell to the ground crying as she clutched her bleeding knuckles, which were cut straight to reveal the bone. Sesshomaru tried to console the girl. Miss, what is wrong? The girl sobbed as she answered. I am going to be pushed B back a G grade because that Uzumaki instructor. She hissed out the name Uzumaki with disdain. He felt my W weapons were incompatible for SH Shinobi duty, all because I did not buy F from the Namikaze store. She cried as she curled into herself. Sesshomaru had no idea how to act in this situation, so he did the best thing he could and gave her a gentle hug, but before he could move, the girl wrapped her arms around him and sobbed into his chest. Sesshomaru patted her back as she continued to sob. He tightened the hug and allowed the warmth to run through them both. The two sat there for a few minutes before the girl stopped sobbing and was simply holding him. So the girl asked Sesshomaru, what is your name? Sesshomaru looked at her and smirked. It is polite to give one's own name before asking for another's. The girl giggled as she indicated to herself. Tenten Kazugana, and you? Sesshomaru smiled as he indicated to himself in a similar fashion. Sesshomaru Inagami. The two sat there and talked for a while, not aware of the happy mothers watching them. In the trees, Izayoi smirked as she looked at Sesshomaru. Fluffy-chan finally made a friend. She gave mock anime tears as she rooted through her kimono for a camera. Tara smirked as she looked at her daughter. Yep, I have never seen Tenten make one friend in her entire life. It's no surprise, really. After her father died, she did not wish to feel that pain ever again. Izayoi smirked to herself. Hey, maybe I can do something for both of them. Maybe she began to whisper her plan into her friend's ear, both of them getting big grins. Next day, Mizuki stood in front of his class and spoke. Alright class, we are receiving another new student today. The class groaned. I know Beneheim-san is a little short-tempered, but I am sure she will come around anyways. I wish to introduce our new student, Ms. Tenten Kazugana. Tenten walked into the room and saw all the students. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Natsuki, but she got a big smile when she saw Sesshomaru. Hey Sesshomaru, said Dog. Yuki turned and smiled. Hi Tenten. Tenten quickly ran over to Sesshomaru and sat beside him, making the 5 Inuzuka fangirls snarl at her. Mizuki sighed as he clasped his head. This is going to be a long 4 years. What if neglected Naruto is Inuyasha's brother? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel. And leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.